Roll call. Are we on? Okay. Okay, now we're on. Roll call.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Here.
Councilmember Mawson?
Here.
Councilmember Campion?
Here.
Councilmember Lamson?
Here.
Mayor Hewer?
Here. Closed session, anything to report out? Pam?
No, the council met and conferred in closed session regarding the threat to public facilities and also for a conference with the city's labor negotiators. There's no reportable action.
Thank you. Agenda approval additions or deletions. I would like to pull items J1 and J6. Anything else?
Well, hold on.
Okay.
J3?
Oh, I'm sorry, J3. Now we'll pull J3. Okay. You'll join me, I skipped a bit, a lot. Okay. You'll join me in a silent prayer followed by the flag salute. Video statement.
This meeting of the Galt City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast Consolidated Communications, and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will air Friday, June 8th at 9 a.m. and Saturday, June 9th at 9 a.m. The City Council meeting videos are also archived on the city's website, and a DVD copy is available for checkout from any library branch.
Okay, so we're going to pull J1, 3, and 6. Any others?
Any left?
Okay. Okay. Presentations. New employee introduction. This is exciting. We're so excited.
Yeah, can I
We're going to
take a vote?
introduce Copper, our new canine. Beautiful.
I don't normally do this, but which one would you like to meet first, the new lieutenant or the dog?
A dog.
We are excited. Oh.
So I have the distinct pleasure of introducing
It's really pretty.
the newest member of the department, a four-legged friend, canine. Being a former dog handler myself, I can honestly say it's probably one of the greatest, no, not probably, it is the greatest job in law enforcement. I miss it every single day, and I have more pictures of. Down in my man cave, I have more pictures of my dog than I do my kids. So, so here I'm going to introduce our newest member, and his name is Copper. And that's not because he's now a cop. That's what he named him when he got him. So let's talk a little bit about Copper. He's a 3-year-old Belgian Malinois Dutch Shepherd mix. Officer Slater here took him home at about 6 weeks old, and he's been part of his family. And they did a lot of socialization with him and the family and the children, including having people over for barbecues and taking them out to coffee shops and restaurants and Lowe's.
Lowe's?
It's a great place to take your
Two by
dog.
four? Yeah.
So as a pup, they enrolled him in basic intermediate obedience at Sycamore Kennels in Lodi, and followed by 2 years of training. And then he was the white dog at the Lodi trial last year, and I'll explain what that is here in just a second. And he's in training right now. Training takes between 2 to 3 months, where he's off the street and doing nothing but training. He will be a patrol dog and a narcotics dog when all is said and done. And so the white dog is a dog that they select that has the ability to show the police officers how to do certain aspects of a trial, whether it's the protection phase, the search phases, and that. So they selected Copper. This is long before he even became a member of our department. So that's how good he was, and that's the level of training that Officer Slater put in with Copper. And so shortly after I arrived here about 2+ years ago, I had interviews with all the employees, and one of the things that Officer Slater said to me is that I want to be a canine. And, being a former dog handler, I said, oh, yeah, because it's a pretty high standard and high threshold. And what you're looking for as a handler, so we're here to introduce Copper, but we're also to talk about the successes of Officer Slater. So you need to be level-headed. You need to be able to use a lot of discretion when you're in different situations, because as a dog handler, you are the first person to go in if you're available. If you're chasing a felony suspect, you are the one that has to take the lead and go in with your dog. And I got to be honest with you, in my 14.5 years as a dog handler, sometimes it's a little scary. So that's why we have the dogs here. And it just, you have to be that kind of person. You have to have that tenacity and that drive And then with today's society, you also have to be somebody that wants to be out there and socialize with your dog and spend time with the community, because who did you guys pick first? You want to see the dog, right? Everybody wants to pet the dog. And so Officer Slater is on our recruitment team. He's a corporal. He's an FTO. I'm going to miss a whole bunch of stuff. But he did our recruitment video for us. He works with the Explorers. He's our Officer of the Year last year. I mean, I'm sure I can go on and on, but that's why he was selected. We went through the testing process, and he just excelled in the testing process. And then after all of that, he says, hey, I have my own dog, which is another rarity in law enforcement today. Usually when you became a dog handler, they go over to Europe, they import dogs from Europe, and then you and the trainer go and select a dog from many other dogs, and they're usually between 1 year and 3 years old. He got to raise this dog from a pup, and so it's a very rare thing. He went through our new trainer, and the trainer passed him 100% with all the testing that they do. So with that, you guys have heard me ramble on long enough, and so I'm going to introduce Officer Slater. I don't know if Copper's going to say a few words or not, but you have to step up here.
I love Brendel dogs.
Thanks for having me here today. I just have so many people I have to thank, and I'll keep this really short, but obviously the chief, who's been super supportive since the very beginning, 2 years ago, finding out that I wanted to work my dog, which is kind of a rarity to take your pet and turn him into a working canine. So I can't thank the chief enough for being supportive. My friends, my family, my lieutenants, my sergeants, my coworkers, my beautiful wife, who if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have my dog. So she's been super encouraging this whole time. My best friends here, my family, my mother-in-law, and just everyone's been super supportive this whole time. So we're excited to come to work and keeping the community safe and my brothers and sisters safe. So we're excited. Really excited to start working.
Great.
Can we move Copper over so we can get him on camera?
Sure.
Yeah, Copper's not on camera, so we got to see. There.
He was there.
There we go. A little bit. There we go.
Does Copper have anything he
There's
wants?
Copper. Now the good shot of Copper.
Be like, right, Copper. I'm not clapping.
All right.
Don't be clapping.
Nice job.
You jumped.
Should we take him?
Oh, now we
Then-
have the introduction of Lieutenant Richard Small. And that's a hard act to follow. I'm sorry. We're really happy to have you too.
That's right. That's right.
You get to stand there.
So next I'm going to introduce our new lieutenant. That is Richard Small, goes by Rick. I don't take promotions lightly. I think that promoting, not only hiring the right people, but promoting the right people in the right positions is what will make or break any organization. And so we had a tough selection process, I think, and we did open it to the outside. We looked for the best to bring in, but Rick, he excelled, and he, through the panel and through the process and through his written assignment, came out number one, head and shoulders above the rest. The rest of the people that competed did very, very well, but I couldn't be more pleased with his performance. I always say that when you promote internally, it's the longest interview process in your life, because as long as you've been here, you've been interviewing for the job and you've been preparing for the job. And so Rick did extremely well. And so he's been here for 8.5 years with Galt PD, and prior to that, he was with the Sacramento Sheriff's Department. When he was here, he was on patrol. He was a field training officer. He's a terrorism liaison officer. He's a hostage negotiator. He was a detective, a corporal, and a sergeant, and he has a bachelor's degree in sociology from UC Davis. He's been married for 12 years, and he has a 9-year-old daughter, and I'm not going to steal the thunder on names and introductions because I want him to do that, but I couldn't be more pleased. He's here. He's an excellent leader, and he is going to help with the management team to help develop the department and help move us to the future. With our growth and everything else that's going on in the city, and I just couldn't be more pleased with the selection. So thank you very much for your dedication, your service to this community and to the department, and welcome aboard to the management group. And so now the mic is yours.
want to point out that there's a lot more cameras being pointed up there when the dog was up there. I won't take it too hard. I get it. My wife was the biggest culprit, I think, in that whole Let me start by just saying how thankful and also humbled I am to be here in this position. I've been here, as the chief said, for 8.5 years. I love it here. Coming from the sheriff's department, that was a great department. This is my home, and I'm happy to be here. Had a bunch of different assignments, enjoyed every one of them, but what I enjoyed the most the entire time was the people I worked with. Many of them are here tonight. Some of them couldn't be here, but they helped make me who I am today, and I'm very grateful for that. Number one, I want to thank the chief for having the confidence to give me this position. I understand the enormous amount of responsibility that I now have in this position, and I promise you, sir, that I won't let you down when it comes to forwarding the mission that you have set forth for us. I also want to thank Mr. Mora, who's also here, who's helped me incredibly in preparing for this position. He was invaluable through this process. Most importantly, though, of course, I want to thank my beautiful wife, Stacy. We just celebrated our 12th anniversary a couple days ago, and my beautiful 9-year-old daughter, Macy, who just finished her last day of 3rd grade, and also my mom, Sydney, who's also here. So thank you all for letting me speak, and I think that's it.
Economic Development Update, Amy Mendez, Economic Development Manager.
Thank you. Actually, I want to grab my glasses really quick.
No, oh, okay.
Oh, much better. Okay. Good evening, Council and our Mayor. I am Amy Mendez, Economic Development Manager, and really going to try to keep this brief. I know that you guys have a kind of long agenda tonight, but wanted to give a quick update on what I've been working on in economic development in conjunction with our city manager, who's really involved, as well as lots of support from community development. So if there's any questions along the way, or if you guys have specific questions on projects maybe that aren't covered, feel free to stop me anytime. First, wanted to touch on the retail businesses, new businesses that have opened here or that are under construction. I think most of you probably are aware of the majority of these. Street Lawn took over a location down on C Street where the old Town Diner used to be next to Estrelita. They offer a somewhat street food type variety, done great business with where they're at, and I think that pretty soon they're going to grow out that location and have to find a new location in town. And you'll start to see a theme here with some of these restaurants. Pastosa by Lucia. Lucia was a caterer here in town and opened a brick and mortar location in the former Squeeze In location on Industrial Drive. So the Italian restaurant opened a couple months ago and again has done great business here in town. Tacos Romero opened in the former Taco Real location on Lincoln Boulevard across from Galt High School, and that was a food truck, very popular here in town, that now has opened a brick and mortar location. And so what you start to see with some of these restaurants is these were existing locations, old restaurants that had been in these locations before, and really you start to see a theme because it's very expensive to build out a restaurant location. Infrastructure requirements, grease traps, commercial hoods, it really bears down on the expense of a new business. And so reusing some of these locations I think has been a great benefit to us. Plus these restaurants really are authentic. These are independently owned and operated. This is really the theme, I think, now, especially with millennials, liking things that are a little bit different, not your straight national chain restaurants that you find in every community. So I think we're going down the right path, especially in our Old Town area. I think that's really a target for some of these restaurants. The Arco AM/PM Starbucks project, I'm sure everybody is aware of some of the stumbling blocks they've had at that location. You know, I started here almost 3 years ago when I'd like to take credit for it, but now I don't want to because it's taken so long to construct. We will have a Starbucks. I think that they're hoping to have construction wrapped up in August, and so hopefully by the fall we will see Starbucks operating as well as the Arco AM/PM. And just south of that location is Gilley's Car Wash and Dog Wash. The car wash actually will locate just south of the Arco AM/PM, and that's been sort of a dilemma for us with that piece of property because it's a little unique in its configuration. There is a lot of street frontage required by Caltrans, so a car wash is a perfect fit for that, and it really opens up visibility to the center and access to the shopping center, and so I think that'll be a good fit once it's up and running. Days Inn, as many of you know, is the former Royal Delta location, and they are close to starting stucco and kind of doing some exterior finishes and starting the roof. We anticipate them wrapping up by the end of summer, hopefully opening in the fall. It's been, I know, a challenging project for community development, particularly our building officials. So I think it'll be a nice project once it's all said and done. We're excited about that. And there's nothing better for the city than TOT revenue, obviously. Great boost to the general fund. The last one is Matsuyama Sushi, which opened over in Galt Village, and I think that brings a good mix of restaurants to that location. Small, but I think that they do offer sort of a unique variety over there. Oops. Next, I wanted to talk briefly about Monterey ICSC, International Council of Shopping Centers, which is a big trade show that we try to attend every year. It is really the regional trade show for the Northern California market for attracting retailers. And so we see a lot of retailers that are attending, developers, brokers, and so it's a good opportunity for us to market. This year was a little unique. This is my third year in Galt attending this event, and it was a little difficult to schedule appointments. And so I think retailers right now they know where they want to go, they know where they're expanding, they know where the market is. And so when you talk to them about Galt, it's a little small, I think, for some of these particular users. We did have conversations with all of these different retailers and restaurants, and there's interest from a lot of the fast casual users. And so Sonic was already looking for a location here. Panda Express showed interest. Chipotle wasn't quite there yet, but we were having conversations with them. And then we did talk to some of the sporting good users and some of the larger retailers. And the larger retailers are just tough right now. The market really, with new construction, they're being very considerate of where they're locating. And so we're having a little bit more difficulty with the larger scale users. And obviously Walmart, it's a direct competition for Target, so I think they would take a little bit more convincing for this location here in Galt. Some of the sites that we marketed were the Cimarron property. I know many of you are familiar with that piece of property, sandwiched sort of between the C Street interchange and the Cimarron exit, just east of 99, 45 acres. It's a large site. It's going to take a long time to fill, and we really need an anchor for that location. And so we have been working with the developer there, outreaching with the broker, trying to market some of the larger users, also unique users. Mixed use is a big deal right now. Incorporating housing as part of these projects is going to be really important as we move forward. And so I think that you'll see a portion of the site develop with retail. You'll also see a portion of it, I think, eventually develop with some high density pedestrian sort of built-in traffic with the higher density developments for apartments or different types of housing component. The other site it's not shown on here, but just to the south of Bossau, there's a piece of industrial property that's about 7 acres. Great access, great visibility from the freeway. It's zoned industrial, but we do see it developing as a retail piece, and so we were marketing that. And there was actually more interest on that location because it's smaller, more of a pad site configuration. You can get more developers interested in some of these smaller scale developments. So I think that we've made some progress with that location. Twin Cities, obviously big retail corridor for us, and so still marketing the Galt Village location really is filled up. There's not much available in Galt Village where the Raleigh Shopping Center is. I think Dollar Tree is the last existing space that is available, and we're running into a little difficulty with Dollar Tree because it's a unique size, 6,000 square feet. with a grocery anchor tenant makes it difficult to fill. Blockbuster was vacant for a very long time, and that's the reason. There's just not a lot of tenants in that size footprint that will fit into a grocery anchored center. Had it been anchored by Kohl's or Ross, soft good users, there's a lot more variety in that square footage. So I think that they've had a little bit of difficulty there. They may have to eventually separate the location into smaller suites. We've really pushed on some shoe users, different apparel users, and again, sort of the roadblock is the fact that it's anchored by a grocery tenant. So gyms all over the place want to go in there, but because of the parking, Rayleigh's has really not been interested in seeing gyms develop in there. So we're still working, we're still sort of utilizing that space as one of our pieces as it relates to that shopping center. The pad site that's available in their fronts right in front of Comfort Inn, it's about 4,000 square foot. It's a vacant pad site that's available for development, and visibility really is blocked. That's kind of a landlocked piece of property, and so that's the difficulty there, access and visibility. Once the GNC septic building comes down, I think you'll see a lot more interest in that location as we move forward. If I talk to Comfort Inn, or if anybody here has talked to Comfort Inn, you've heard the word Black Bear Diner dropped, I think, every time I talk to Mel. He really wants a restaurant on that location, and we're still, I think that will, eventually be a good location for a restaurant. It's just a matter of really opening up the center with the visibility there. When Starbucks opens and when you see the car wash open, I think that opens up access to that location a lot more. The other location, Tractor Supply, that shopping center's filled up. They do have one pad site behind Rite Aid that is still available. It's about 1.5 acres. And what we've seen there is a lot of interest from office type development, medical users, dentists, and your traditional gas station, fast food, convenience store. It doesn't front onto Twin Cities, which makes it a little bit less marketable from a retail standpoint. And that's really, everybody we talk to wants to be on Twin Cities, and there's really not much space available. So I think that there's been a lot more demand for that. We've seen a lot more interest. I think that will develop within the next year or so. It's just a matter of who develops there and who kind of jumps on it. The piece across the street is owned by a local developer. Well, the same owner of the Tractor Supply Center owns the center just to the east. That piece of property is about 11.5 acres. Again, it's a little bit large. We've had a lot of interest on, can we change it to a residential, and then just anchor the corner with retail? And we don't want that, because once Eastview develops, you'll see a lot more demand on that property for commercial development. So I know Chris and I have been in several meetings, and we've held strong with our brokers and developers about being retail on that site, so, or some type of mixed-use development. But typically the interest has been residential with a gas station on the corner, and we just haven't sort of backed down for that. So they need an anchor there as well. Orchard Supply would be perfect if we could get some type of hardware home, user there. And so there's some infrastructure issues, undergrounding of some big utilities that need to happen. It's going to be an expensive site to develop, and so it's going to take the right user to come in and be ready to pull the trigger. I do think once Eastview starts to develop and that residential area continues to grow, you'll see a little bit more demand for that. These are some of the, Tia and I, the assistant planner over in community development, went to ICSC together. We talked to lots of different retailers and brokers and developers, and these were pretty constant in the responses that we got. You're just too small. Nobody really understands the trade area of Galt. We incorporate a much larger area than just the city, but that's really hard to really, present in a 10-minute spiel to a retailer. We try to explain to them the trade area. We pull people from Wilton. We pull people from, the surrounding county areas. But, we are trying to bring them to our community, and so I don't think they really trust what we're saying most of the time. They're already in the trade area, so they're either in Lodi or they're in Elk Grove, and they think that that is, feeding the Galt area, and so they aren't interested in another location. Our daytime population, that's big for restaurants. They want to know where the people are working and who's going to be eating at their restaurants, specifically sit-down restaurants, and so that's a little bit of a struggle. A lot of them just aren't in the market in this time. They're looking at urban areas. Their business plan calls for, more concentration in terms of population. And then shovel-ready freeway sites. If anybody's interested in Galt, they want to be right next to the freeway, right next to the interchange, and they want the site ready to go, and that's been a little bit of a struggle as well. And so as we move forward, I think that we'll have more opportunity with the Simmerhorn site and also with the Galt Market property. I know that we've talked about this a little bit to council. I know everybody's sort of heard about the grant that we received from the California Energy Commission, and this site is important because it's right off the freeway. It's right at a main interchange in the middle of the city. It's surrounded by residential. Once the senior development develops, you'll have sort of, on both sides residential development, and that's going to be key to kind of feeding this Galt Market property. And so we did talk to retailers at ICSC about this just to kind of get the appetite for retail development, and everybody loves the location. There's nothing buildable right now, which was the problem, but everybody likes the site. It's close to the freeway. It's easy access. There's visibility from the freeway, and so we do think that there's some potential here. With regard to the California Energy Commission grant, really we were looking for some funding to explore joint uses for the property. What else can we do for this giant area that we utilize as the market on Tuesday and Wednesday? What else can we do as it relates to every other day of the week? How do we utilize it for the weekends and bring in more people into the community? Creating a gateway and a focal point into the market area, really representing, this is where the Galt Market is, and this is where Civic Center is, and this is how you tie in sort of the interchange and the entrance into Galt. That's really one of the focuses as it relates to the Energy Commission grant, trying to master plan this area, providing better connectivity and circulation within the site. I know that everybody always talks about how funky it is when you get off the C Street interchange and then you have to go right to get to the McDonald's and to the grade change, and everything sort of plays into that. And so I think part of the reason some of those freeway sites haven't really developed to their full potential is because of access. And so that will be considered as part of the program, the master plan. And then the economic feasibility, what we're looking at with that is trying to determine what this site can absorb. If it's retail development, if it's a hotel, how much space can we set aside for retail? Where should it go? How should it be incorporated as part of this site? We're sitting on prime retail right now as it relates to the location of City Hall. The Littleton Center, access, from the freeway is going to be important. So how do we plan that all into one comprehensive, overarching master plan? And we've contracted with HDL, which is our sales tax provider, and our sales tax consultant. What they do is they're analyzing right now really what the market could absorb for retail. What's possible on this site? How much site of the property square footage should be set aside for retail? Can we offer another hotel here in Galt? Will that pencil for a developer? Is there a demand for it? So those are some of the things that we're looking at with regard to the actual feasibility study that we're conducting. And hopefully that will be finished as we're coming online with the master plan designer to determine how that all plays into it. We don't want to just put a plan together for the purpose of putting a plan together that's going to sit on a shelf. It really needs to be marketable. And then looking at the legislative path as it relates to...
Just excuse me. And the other really important part is I want the community to know that the community will have input.
Yes.
We kind of passed
In my
over
notes
that.
right here at the bottom.
Okay. Yeah, that we just really want to make sure that this isn't, we're not going to do this in a
No.
bubble. It really is important that there's going to be a lot of community discussion.
And you'll notice too that
and a
we
lot
have,
of-
this isn't just our property that's incorporated as part of it. I mean, there's other properties surrounding that we want to include as part of this discussion because we want input from everybody. We don't want to, block off McDonald's so nobody has access to it. Obviously, we want to include them as part of this discussion. So even the properties that front onto the freeway, there's way more profit than what they're developing right now and what they're generating. And so wanting to include them as part of the discussion, I think, is going to be important. So yes, community stakeholder meetings, that'll be part of this whole master plan process. The community will be involved, the property owners will be involved, city staff will be involved. And then legislatively, what we are going to do about the restrictions on the property. Do we do anything about it? Do we just look into, our poor city attorney has been researching this. It's quite the history of this property and how the city inherited it. And so we're digging through that right now to determine what can be developed on it. And is there legislative issues that we need to address moving forward? And so that's part of this discussion as well. The last program that I wanted to talk about and project I'm working on is the wayfinding signage program. And so it's probably been 6 months now, we came and I think Emily actually presented on a grant that we received from Supervisor Natoli for wayfinding signage. And we did a TOT grant application to the county for wayfinding signage, and we didn't get the grant, but Don Natoli actually gave us some of his discretionary funds to use for wayfinding signs. And so with that funding and a little bit of funds left over in economic development for the year, we've contracted with a company, Studio Image of San Francisco is going to be handling the wayfinding signage program for the city of Galt. And one of the reasons this company was selected and this firm was because they have really broad experience with branding. And I feel like that's one thing that the city of Galt sort of is missing right now is that branding component. What do these signs look like? What does the city of Galt want to be known for? A branding campaign is very expensive. So this is a way, I think, for us to really utilize an experienced consultant to get an idea of what our brand is, working with our staff, but working also with the beautification committee, the historical preservation committee, talking to the chamber and incorporating all of these groups and kind of brainstorming what this brand is that the city wants to be known for and what we want to, push out to the public. And so we don't want to be known just as, a logo that hangs on the wall. Really, what do we want to be known for? What is our brand? And incorporating that as part of our wayfinding signage. So we will be working with the consultant and with these different stakeholder groups to sort of develop that program as we move forward. It will take about 5 to 6 months to finish. And the company that we selected actually has done lots of municipal wayfinding signage. They've worked with universities, they've worked with parks and recreation programs and trail systems. And so lots of broad experience, banner programs, and that was one of the things that they mentioned in their proposal was we have these banner poles with no banners on them. Maybe we can incorporate this as part of it. Where we get the money to do this, I'm not sure yet. This is just, that's the next step, and we'll ask Don Natoli for some additional funding later on. But that's where we're at with the wayfinding signage program. Later on, I'm going to be talking about the SCIP program, the Statewide Community Infrastructure Program is another item on the agenda. Another incentive that we're trying to make available for developers on the residential end. And then tourism, really kind of focusing on tourism and putting together a package, some type of incentive package to encourage tourism, entertainment type uses, hotel development of that nature as we move into the future. Working on retail, working on commercial, working on job creation and industrial. I think that tourism is another important aspect I know that the city council has mentioned. So that's what would be known next. So with that, if there's any questions.
Thank you, Amy.
No problem.
Public comment?
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the public may address the council on non-agenda items. Speakers may address city council on any agenda item during consideration of the item. Speakers shall restrict their comments to issues that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council and limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Please fill out a speaker sheet located on the table inside the entrances to the council chambers and forward the completed speaker sheet to the clerk.
Becca Davis? Oh, Becca Dennis, I'm sorry, I apologize.
That's okay.
Welcome.
Good evening, I'm Becca Dennis. You might know my mother-in-law, she's right out here. And this is my mother-in-law. I'm the activities director at Liberty Ranch High School. I'm also here speaking for Amanda Bear, who is the activities director at Galt High School. It came to our attention last week from Councilwoman Lamson that you guys now need us to ask for a waiver for the parade security. We were unaware of it, and we are happy to follow any protocol necessary from here on out. We've been doing the parade since I was a little girl here. I've been here pretty much my whole life and spent my whole life watching the parade as a little girl and then in it when I was in high school and now running it. And it's a huge part of our community. Even with the split of the two high schools, we anchor our first semesters into our homecoming programs, and pulling the community into our homecoming programs has made a huge difference in the culture on our campus, and I think even in town. So we're just here to request the waiver fee for those two parades. I know it is two parades now instead of one. They both offer some very important things to the community. Amanda Bear wanted to mention that, we don't have a stadium for Galt this year because they are revamping it. And she's just a visionary. I just adore her. She's excited about pulling in more community because you are seeing that we're not going to have the parade on the track anymore. She wants to bring in the Kiwanis and other members of the community for her parade. And then on our side of town, we work with the elementary schools and the middle schools to pull in their kids to our program as well. And so it's just a huge part of not only the community, but for us, it's a huge part of our campus culture. So we're just hoping that you could waive that fee for us this year, and I promise to do it the right way from here on out. I'm pretty much a rule follower when it comes to that, and I know Amanda is as well, so hopefully we can get that from you. Any questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Armando, did we reach out to the school districts to let them know regarding the program, regarding putting in for it?
Yes, we did. We sent them a reminder. You did send them a
So it went to
reminder.
the administrators, both schools?
I think where it went, because I just got the email today, it went to Mr. Brown, our interim superintendent. We've had a couple shuffles in the last couple years, and I totally believe that that's true, that they did send it to him. It was just a surprise to us, and like I said, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to fill out the work. I've been working with Armando for years, filling out that paperwork. We typically don't send it in, and it wasn't on my radar because I typically don't send it in until after July 1st, which is when we can ask for our insurance and our proof and turn in all the paperwork completed together. So I'm sure Armando's absolutely right. He probably did send it to our admin. It just got to us, actually, I think 2 days ago was the final, like, oh, here's what this was kind of thing. So just,
Thank you, Becca. But I just want to make sure that, it's okay.
Yeah,
I
yes.
just want to make sure the city really had done their due diligence.
An email was sent to, I didn't want to name the name, but yes, the
Principals and-
superintendent and both principals of both schools.
Okay,
Yeah, they just didn't forward it on to the activities director, so
thank you.
happens.
Okay. Reports by city council members on regional boards, commissions, and committees. Councilman Campion,
Nothing to report tonight.
Councilmember Lamson.
We had a safety committee meeting, and the safety committee, their purpose is to recommend things to council. And we've had some discussion about 4th Street and crosswalks that are hard to see and speeding. And the committee voted to make a recommendation to council, but right now we're researching some possible crosswalk signs and things and make sure they fit in with the Old Town feel. So if council has a chance, can you guys drive down 4th Street and look at the crosswalks, just so you can have an idea when the committee comes to make the report on that? I attended the Ray Tea, and it was quite lovely, and a lot of ladies had their hats, and it was a wonderful little afternoon, and it's such a nice venue. Hopefully we can get people aware of that and have a few more things. The Chamber of Commerce had a meet and greet at Banner Bank, and that was a nice little afternoon to meet some new business members, and city manager stopped by there. I assisted the beautification committee in cleanup day Saturday, and we did what certain people like to call as the Galt Gateway. And we picked up, how many? 8 bags of garbage, maybe more. It was heartening and disheartening to see all the trash and garbage kind of laying around this area. The city, just so I'm clear, that the city property was very clean. So,
The freeway?
no, just our property.
I mean, the freeway's probably where a lot of the overpass and stuff.
No, it was all over.
Oh,
Some shopping centers and things. And I just want to put a shout out to Trevor Minchin, who followed along on his little, you see movies where the camera moves. He's on a skateboard, and it looks like a professional. It looks very professional. So if you get a chance to see that, Beautification might present that to you guys. And that's about it.
well, thank the beautification committee for doing that. That's hot day. Tom?
Well, I also attended the safety committee meeting. I would like to Also suggest that, take advantage of the Galt Connect if you see an issue. And that also came up, and I think it's underutilized, but it's out there. It's a immediate service request. And in case you don't know it, but there's also all kinds of reports on all the requests that come in and how they're cleared. So somebody actually looks at it. I did watch the Amgen race go through town. I think it came through between 11:04 and 11:05. I got 35 seconds of video. That was kind of fun for a little town. Other than that, I attended a fundraiser at the Grange Hall, and that's been all my events. Other than that, working for a living.
Mark?
Still.
I too attended the engine. That was a lot of fun, especially the video. We couldn't figure out where it was coming from.
Oh, the helicopter. Oh, yeah. I thought it was a drone.
I know. SACOG met, and the MOU for the city and the SACOG was renewed as far as the complete streets and safe routes to school, which, for those who aren't aware, that's all the sidewalks and the ADA compliant stuff that's going on around town. Please bear with us. We have to meet federal requirements as well as putting in those sidewalks. Other thing that was mentioned is the next round of safe routes and complete streets will be opening up. So, Mr. Winkler, it's in your ballpark. And other than that, I'll let you go ahead and cover the Greater Sac.
I also attended the Amgen tour. I had a great time, as did my grandson. Healthcare, I had a meeting with the city manager and Lodi Adventist. They're looking at expanding some healthcare opportunities here in town, and so we're exploring that with them. With other staff were there too. I had Library Authority this month, and just to promote to everybody the summer reading program. Kids can go to the library, do it online or in the physical library, and for every 5 books, they get prizes. And one of the prizes that we are partnering with them is for every 5 books, they'll get a pass to the swimming pool. So please, if you got children, and it's actually children or adults, it's open to all ages. Okay, and I attended the Historical Society tea also. It was it was great weather, very nice. Greater Sacramento Competitiveness Forum. Vice Mayor Cruz, myself, and Amy went to it. And it was interesting talking about the vision for Greater Sacramento and some of the possibilities and the things that they could see. And the whole area, which really is kind of 5 counties, working together as a whole regional, instead of just everybody competing with each other, of how can we work together to become a regional, much like, the Silicon Valley, where you start looking at the Sacramento region as a driving force in different industries. So it's really exciting to see what's happening with Greater Sac. I'm really pleased that we took the leap of faith a couple years ago and joined. I attended City Tots graduation. It was really fun. I want to thank Monica. We had a great time. They were great. We had 33 graduates. Was it 33 or 22? 22 graduates. So, and I actually got the really great time to attend Lake Canyon Elementary's fun run. And they actually raised, I want to really put a shout out for Lake Canyon. Those kids raised nearly $7,000 for local and national nonprofits. They do this every year, or I guess this is their 3rd year, is my understanding. And they, is it their 2nd?
6th.
6? Oh, 6, okay. But it was really fun, and the kids have a great time, and they're giving back to their community, and it's really teaching about character. It's not just education, but it's also character. So really, Judy Hayes, the principal's doing an amazing job teaching those kids about not just education, but what it means to be a member of our community. I also got to attend this Saturday the event in Old Town with the food trucks and the city vehicles for this Touch a Truck, and I want to thank staff for bringing the vehicles out. I want to thank Cal Waste and the other sponsors, the school district, bringing the vehicles out. It was I know that we had at least 240 kids, and we probably had a lot more than that. So we had all those 240 kids plus lots of adults. So even with the heat and as hot as it was, the kids were having a great time. I had attended a similar event in a nearby community where they didn't have nearly the number of vehicles and they had long lines, and that's really hard for kids at that age. So really thank you to the staff. It was great. I hope we can do it again. It was really good.
Yeah, I had fun with the air horns.
Thank you, Armando, and your staff and Public Works. I mean, it was a citywide staff event to put it, to help out. And I know, because I've been to food trucks many times, it actually, for as hot as it was, the attendance was really good at the food truck event. Okay, anything else? We'll go on to the information consent calendar. We pulled item 1. J1 was pulled.
Yes, that was the minutes of the regular meeting of May 15th, 2018. There was a minor correction that needed to be made on page 6 under Measure R. Lori Hewer did not second the motion. It was Mark Cruz. And that's the only correction to the minutes.
Do I have a motion?
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Campion, second by Councilmember Molson. All those in favor? Oh, can we just do aye, or do you want a roll call? Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Molson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye.
Thank you.
Motion passes 5-0 vote. Item J3, pulled by Councilmember Lamson.
Yeah, I was looking at the contract, and it's pretty similar to last year's, except last year we had a $14,000 discount, and I had some help with some research on that, and I just want that explained in the public so they can know why we're not getting that $14,000 discount, and the chief knows, so.
Okay, Chief?
Yes, so prior to this last contract, the city was paying about $20,000 a year for animal control. The former city manager and the head of the animal control services met, and they negotiated a new contract. And what the county realizes is that the city of Galt represents about 3% of the population of Sacramento County, so therefore we pay 3% of their costs. Through negotiations, they were able to knock it down to 1.5%. But in doing so, the police department would have to take over some of the animal control duties, which we've been doing for quite some time now, long before this contract, and we continue to do this day. And through those negotiations, one of the things that was brought up is to reduce the costs beyond that 1.5%. With a $15,000 fee reduction if the city was to work with a nonprofit to develop and come up with an adoption center here within Galt. Because of our geographic location, it makes it really hard for animal control to come down here, and it makes it even harder for our citizens to go up to Bradshaw where animal control is. So that $15,000 reduction in that contract, I find nothing in any of the contracts that says it's in perpetuity. It's just it was in that specific contract, and when we renegotiated this contract, that item was never brought up. But we were able to negotiate that 1.5% to continue. So since the beginning of that contract from 15 to 18, we've been paying between $93,000 and $99,000 a year. This new contract that we have, we will continue to pay the same amount, between $93,000 and $99,000 a year for animal control services, which is quite the deal. It's about half of what we should be paying, or what everybody else in the county that uses county animal services pays.
Thank you.
So that was a one-time reduction. It was $15,000. It was a one-time. It was a one-time over the 3 years. It was a one-time reduction, correct?
So
Wasn't
that's
per
my
year.
understanding. I found nothing in any of the documentation that says that it's an ongoing.
Yeah, when I looked at the contract, it was like a one-time thing.
What it said was that we needed to establish, in order to get that $15,000, it was so we established a relationship with a nonprofit and work with them for an adoption center. That work was done. So it was done about 2 years ago to establish that relationship. So.
Well, when I read the contract, it also talks about the $15,000 was also in recognition of all of the work that our police do in regards to with with animals and in trying to find homes for them, posting, contacting. And we did work with to help establish a nonprofit, but they haven't moved forward on doing an actual adoption center, is my understanding, correct?
I'm unaware of what their,
Okay.
where they are in their status of their adoption center.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
So moved?
Second.
Motion by, motion by Councilmember Lamson, second by Councilmember Vice Mayor Cruz. All those, roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Mawson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote. Done too many voice votes in my life. Okay, I pulled item J6, the authorization to purchase a Ford F-250 truck with service body and ladder rack. I just had a quick question. The existing vehicle, do we have plans, and I'm looking at Steve, but I guess I should. Do we have plans on what is happening, what's going to happen to the existing vehicle that this vehicle's to replace?
Yes, Mayor Hewer, we do. We have a variety of options available to us when a vehicle reaches the end of its reliable service life. One option would be to put it up for immediate sale upon replacement, try to capture as much residual value as we can, put that back into our various funds for procurement of future equipment. Another option, however, is if we have a vehicle that we no longer feel is reliable for full-time lead duty, but still has value to the city for auxiliary uses or as a backup when another vehicle is out of service. Sometimes we'll sort of put them on the do not resuscitate list where we're not going to put in an engine or a transmission, but as long as we can just, oil changes, preventive maintenance and brakes, those sorts of things, we might keep them in service a little longer to have the value of, any specialty equipment that was put on them. In this case, we are replacing a 12-year-old vehicle with over 120,000 miles. It's starting to have some service history, and our shop has put it at the top of our priority we have 3 vehicles in the same year of the same class, and this is the one that's been the most problematic. So rather than wait for it to sort of fail in the line of duty and then budgeting a new one can take a process of time, we did put it in the budget. It was supported in the current fiscal year budget. We held off till about mid-year to evaluate to make sure no other urgencies arose. And I'm taking the long way to your question here, but kind of for the public's benefit. Then the state list had expired, so we normally would use a state purchasing list to piggyback purchase on a state discount, and that list only recently was renewed with a new set of vendors. So in the meantime, I was getting toward the end of the year, and we felt we better move on the process of procurement. So we did locate some vehicles that were in stock at local Sacramento area dealerships, and in fact are recommending one of 2. The first one that's a few $100s cheaper would be a new vehicle that's subject to prior sale, so it could already be sold for all we know. So we're also recommending as a backup an alternate Ford dealership that would be willing under the new state list to furnish a similar vehicle, similarly equipped, but it'd be a 4 to 6 month order period. Your question was what's end of life. In this case, it's got a specialty flatbed on it with stake side units and a specialty lift gate. And then we use that to move furniture, we use that to move barricades, we use that to pick up things. We did some planters for the beautification committee with that lift gate. It's the only truck in our fleet that has that type of a lift gate. So we're recommending that we put it on the do not resuscitate and sort of run it to failure and see if we can get another year or 2 out of it in light duty.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question. On your secondary source, if the first one should be sold, is it going to be at the same price or lesser?
The second bidder, we got a bid tabulation with all 3, was a couple $100s more for a model year newer, but those have to be ordered and equipped. So the one we're recommending is a brand new 2017 that's fully equipped on the lot. If we can get there quick enough with your approval tonight. If it's gone, then we are recommending that we be authorized to proceed to the second low bid.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mayor Hewer, second by Councilmember Campion. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Mawson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote. Back to the other items on the consent calendar. Receive and file warrants. Award of booth tracker software agreement with Soft Systems LLC for Galt Market. Appropriations limit for the fiscal year 2018-2019, and treasurer's report for period ending April 2018. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Cruz, second by Councilmember Molson. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Mawson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote. Scheduled matters. Public hearing to amend and restate a resolution authorizing the city to join the statewide community infrastructure program. Amy Mendez?
Good evening again. Actually happy to come stand up here because it's freezing in the seat that I'm sitting in down. I know better. Every time I sit down here, it seems like it's so cold. But I did hear that the air conditioning broke a couple meetings ago, so I guess I shouldn't complain right now.
Don't complain.
Yes. This evening, what we are here to discuss is the Statewide Community Infrastructure Program, or SKIP is the acronym that we use. And SKIP is actually a pooled tax exempt financing program that can finance impact fees and public improvements for private developments. And so actually, the city is already a member of this program, of the SKIP program. We do offer it for commercial and industrial developments. Somewhat of an incentive that we're able to offer for impact fees and public improvements because developers are able to spread their costs for impact fees and improvements over a 30-year period through this tax exempt financing program. But we do not offer SKIP as it stands right now for residential projects. And so this evening, what we are looking for is to restate and adopt a resolution for SKIP to be used for both residential and commercial development. Again, SKIP is the Statewide Community Infrastructure Program. It's a pooled tax exempt financing program that can finance impact fees and public improvements for private developments. Bonds are issued by the California Statewide Communities Development Authority, which is a joint powers authority sponsored by the League of California Cities as well as the California Statewide Association of Counties. And really its purpose is to offer bond programs of public benefit to its members in California. And so that's why CSCDA really exists. The bonds are 30-year fixed-rate tax-exempt bonds, and they're secured by property owner assessments, so pretty typical of assessment districts. But these are pooled, so they can be used for smaller-scale projects. As I mentioned, the city is already a member of SKIP, and so we're looking really to adopt a new resolution allowing us to utilize SKIP for residential projects. We've had interest from several different residential developers to utilize SKIP. Really, I think what's happening in 2006 when this program was adopted, developers, residential-wise, were not having problems financing residential development projects. And now we're seeing a definite shift in the way that projects are being financed. Construction costs are a lot higher, land costs are higher, labor costs are very high. And so it's been difficult for them to finance the infrastructure improvements, but also pay the development impact fees up front for these projects. And so the senior development has shown interest, as well as KB Home has inquired. And so I think this is something that the city should consider to help facilitate some of these housing developments. And really, I think one thing that we've mentioned over and over again is that rooftops really are going to drive the retail here. And I know that, you know, the focus being on development with regard to, you know, the general fund, wanting to boost that retail sales tax is what's going to drive it. Industrial job creation is also, you know, a big thing with tourism and TOT. And so I think having this program available to assist the residential developers will be very beneficial. SKIP is usually used to finance projects that are too small for traditional CFDs. So a lot of times you'll see master plan developments such as Eastview, large enough, they have enough in terms of public infrastructure and different improvements and city service requirements that they can put together a full-fledged CFD. Smaller projects are not able to do that. And so SCIP can finance projects as small as $500,000 and up to $5 million. The developers benefit because instead of paying cash up front for public improvements that are required by the city or for impact fees, they're able to spread those costs over a 30-year period. The program also allows CSCDA to establish, standalone Melrose Community Facilities Districts, which allow for financing public improvements and services. The standalone really is for the $5 million mark and over, and that would require an agreement between the city and the developer as well as CSCDA. So that's sort of separate. That's a standalone CFD, similar to what's being done for Eastview right now. And I don't know if that's something that the city really is on board with at this time, and so that's available to us if we choose to, but it would require city approval. It would require a separate agreement with city council, so that would have to come back if we were looking at utilizing it for a full-fledged CFD. SCIP assessments are first in line as a tax lien, and so they're relatively safe. And with approval of SCIP for residential, commercial, and industrial development projects, the city does retain the discretion regarding which projects would move forward. We do have to sign the application. We do have to be on board with the developer utilizing SCIP for their projects, whether it be public infrastructure improvement or development impact fees. So there is some discretion that we have with regard to that. We will promote the program. I think it's a great benefit for residential developers, as is for commercial and industrial developers, but we do have the discretion to not have SCIP be utilized for certain projects. So with that, staff is requesting that council amend and restate the 2006 resolution to allow SCIP to be used for both residential and commercial development projects. Is there any questions?
Questions? Go ahead, Kurt.
Yes, Amy, on the, well, a couple of things. One is the city retains the discretion on which projects qualify and those that don't. Is there going to be some policy or criteria established in order to help, I assume, staff make that decision with regard to which projects are eligible and which are not?
Well, I think in terms of, and I don't know if Kimberly wants to step in, but in terms of size and, public infrastructure was a big discussion that we had in terms of what type of public infrastructure we want to include. And I think that on an individual basis, that's going to be something that has to be discussed at the staff level.
I think it was some of the things we talked about are the size of the project, what type of CFD, if it is, obviously a standalone is a different animal than if you have a pooled type of project, a smaller project. So some of it will be whether it's the type of project where the city wants to oversee more of the process. That is one thing. When SCIP is involved, basically SCIP does that process. Yes. They have their own team that does it, which is a good thing, I think, for smaller projects. It may not be necessarily with larger projects. So it will be something we evaluate as a case-by-case basis, but we'd like to certainly have this in place so that it is an option.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great program. I mean, there's basically no financial obligation or risk to the city. I mean, it's between the developer, the property owner, and SCIP. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And I know the report says that it's this assessment would be first in line, and maybe this is more of a question for you. If there are, because we have multiple districts in the city, some of which are Melrose school districts, and I don't know exactly where their boundaries are today, but doesn't Melrose? I mean, how do they determine which is in line? Because only because we've dealt with, non-payment of assessment in the past.
We would need to look at the specific order of, obviously, the specific case that it issued, but usually the CFDs are one of the first. Sometimes I think the property taxes, though, usually the county usually gets to come in first. If there's ad valorem property taxes, those usually will often trump the assessment district. But the assessment district gets to skip over other ones to be near the head of the line, if not the head of the line, depending on what is at issue.
That would be part of the criteria that the city would use along with SCIP on deciding the projects, I would assume. That would have to be part of it, the risk.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about.
Yes, and that comes into play with the size of the project, what type of CFD. A lot of them will already be annexing into existing CFDs, so I don't expect this will come up a lot. But so it's one we will be sort of evaluating as we get projects in and interested. They may be more interested at first with the impact fees, since we have existing services CFDs already.
And that's been most of the discussion that we've had with the developers who have shown interest has been really on the development impact fee side. We get an earful from our developers on the commercial and on the residential side, Steve, as it relates to development impact fees. And so, this is just a tool in our toolbox really to be able to say we are able to offer this as a financing program if they should, be interested.
Yeah, particularly if they can't get a loan for it, then this is a good way to.
And we asked the
Offset
question
the
about
cost.
being first in line because I had talked to a hotel developer at one point and offered up Skip, and they said, well, Skip is first in line on the lien, and so my bank, isn't going to loan me any money to build this project. But what we've heard from the Skip representatives is that banks typically would like for them to finance the fees separately. They don't want to be financing that as part of their construction loan. And so they're okay with Skip being first in line as it relates to the CFD tax pooled financing, the way that they put it together, because the construction loan they want to be separate.
So Amy, we maintain control of all design of the project still and all of the impact fees, correct?
Yep.
So there's no change in,
Typically what happens is that if they utilize the funds for development impact fees, depending on the timing, they issue bonds, and I think it's in the springtime and then one in the fall. And if they're able to get in and the timing works, they can have the bond payments or the bonds pay for the development impact fees up front to the city, or they can be paid back, reimbursed essentially on the back end. So nothing changes at staff level. On the public infrastructure side, essentially they get approval from the city on the infrastructure projects, and then they pay out the bond funds
okay.
once those have been approved.
Any further questions? We got a public hearing.
I think it's a good program myself. I thought so in 2006 too.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
So open the public hearing. Any public comment? Close the public hearing.
Yes, let me send
Whoop. Oh, come on up. Okay. Open public
I
hearing.
answered my question already, but I just wanted to clarify. So if the developer, for some reason, defaults and doesn't repay the skip loan, would the city be on the hook to repay that?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No.
That was all I want to know. So it wouldn't come to basically the local property tax owners or anything like that? They would have to still go after the developer for that?
Sir, can you
Property
state
owner.
your name for the record, too?
Name's Avery Banks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any further public comment? Close public comment. One thing I really like about this is it might really help some of those small developments, those infill projects that I know have a harder time. So I was in favor for that reason. So do we have a motion or any further?
Move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Mulson, second by Vice Mayor Cruz. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Mawson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote. Regular calendar, Treasurer's Office, City Investment Policy for fiscal year 2018, 2019. And our treasurer's joined us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Farrell.
Per government code, the investment policy has to be presented in a public meeting every year. And I have to remind you as council that ultimately you have the investment responsibility every year. And that's why you have the investment policy, because in this investment policy, it states that you are delegating that responsibility to the city treasurer. And as that, you are also saying, giving direction to the city treasurer to say, okay, you have responsibility, or we're delegating the authority to you. You have to follow the objectives of safety first, liquidity second, and then get as much of a yield third. And also in the investment policy, you're also stating, we want you to invest in these particular investments. And those things are, like, say, treasury bills or treasury notes, other government agencies. We, as a city, currently buy callable agencies, CDs, commercial paper, reverse repurchase agreements. So you're specifying in here, and if you really want to see it, it's in section 9 in here, as far as exactly what the instruments are. And that's the only difference I made between this year's investment policy and last year's investment policy is last year it had fiscal year 2017, 2018. This one now says 2018, 2019. So virtually no change except for the dates and the fiscal year. So I ask for your approval tonight as submitted.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lamson, second by Councilmember Campion. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Mawson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye.
Thank you.
Passes 5-0 vote. Thank you, Sean.
I'd like to add, though, Sean, you do a very good job.
Well, thank you.
Even if you did only have to change the year. But our investments are up.
Yeah, you got those dates changed.
Okay. Finance Department. Review the proposed fiscal year 2017-2018 budget adjustments, proposed fiscal year 2018-2019, and fiscal year 2019-20 budget proposals, and adopt a resolution approving the budgets.
I'm going to get us started here and kind of take a look at that 20,000 view, and then turn it over to Emily to take a look at maybe the 10,000 view, foot view of our budget, and then dig into any details that the council would like to dig into on the budget. And, the budget process is kind of a journey for staff. Never enough time. Probably every year we take a look and say we should have started a month earlier. This year in particular was kind of our deep dive into a budget. We have a 2-year budget cycle, with next year as a kind of a midterm review of the 2-year budget. So we kind of get into a little bit more details. One of the things that I do appreciate through this budget process is all the meetings, because I learn a lot. There's a lot of information you kind of picture yourself in meetings not only with the directors of each department, but the mid-managers, the admin assistants, experts in the different divisions and areas, educating me, educating finance department, sometimes even the directors on where we're at and what it takes to run our community. Our real focus, and with that, I'd like to thank staff. A lot of hours, a lot of analysis, goes into these budgets. A lot more than I probably know and imagine. So I do thank everybody that was involved, in preparing this budget, specifically the finance department, because they were running numbers and changing, pages in the budget that went out to the city council, I think, until about 3:55 on a Wednesday, or maybe it was a Thursday. But I do want to thank everybody, for their effort in putting this budget together. And we talk about the budget pretty much every time I meet with the city council, or we do review our projects as we go through our strategic plan process. When I bring Armando brings Parks and Recs programs and processes and the status of our equipment and playgrounds to the council. We're really talking about our budget and where are we at with our city facilities. And we've done a lot of analysis in the past year and a half, 2 years on where we're at. We've evaluated our vehicles, our equipment, our parks, and a lot of that data is going into this budget, and we're going to talk about some future things that we'd like to put in place, based on that information that we now know today. Not a lot of focus. We did focus on it, but water, sewer budgets are stable. we've had a lot of discussions in the last couple of years, through the rates process. Where are we at? What does it take to run those facilities? I'm very comfortable where we're at. We're, I think, on a good track of kind of sustainability, and that's the word I'm going to use over and over. Is I'm looking to create a sustainable budget. Not just today, but in the future. So people that are here in 10 years from now, you kind of look back and say, hey, these are good processes that we set in place. So we're not scrambling on a daily basis trying to figure out, well, how are we going to cover those budget costs? And Emily's going to get into that a little bit more as she goes through the budget. So our focus is general fund budget, kind of the staff review. I asked for a status quo budget. I got my numbers. I went back to staff and said, hey, try again. We're not status quo. We've, last budget cycle came to the council and we balanced our budget on unassigned fund balance. That means our revenues weren't enough to cover our expenses. Our expenses exceeded our revenues. And my goal this year is to get close that gap, get a lot closer, get something that we can go to the council and say, hey, this is going to be a manageable budget. So they came back, I looked at the numbers, and then I cut another 20% out of O&M. And you got to the numbers that you have in your budget binder today. Those numbers are, I think, pretty realistic. I'm kind of, a year from now, we'll look back over my shoulder and I'll say, hey, you probably shouldn't have cut that. We kind of, went, we didn't have the foresight of XYZ, popping up. We probably should have budgeted a little extra. This budget before you doesn't include a lot of contingencies. And a contingency is, typically on a public works project, you'll have a 10% contingency on a project for kind of the what ifs that come up. We typically build in some contingencies in the budget kind of for those what ifs. It's not a lot in here. So I'm projecting that we're going to be back to the city council probably several times throughout the year to talk about, hey, we didn't expect this. We need to kind of maybe readjust some of the existing budget or allocate additional funds to cover additional costs. So those are things that will come up. As we went through the budget, there were some projects that came up, and some planning projects in particular that Chris and I had been talking about, and I cut those out. I said, staffing, timing. When the time comes to do some of these projects, we're going to be back to the council, talking about it a little bit more and explaining what those projects are. Instead of kind of doing that through the budget process, we decided to just kind of pull those types of projects out, and then we'll come back to the city council, at a later date, with those certain types of projects, and have those discussions. In your budget before you, I am recommending 2 new positions and 2 temporary positions, or actually temporary part-time. Temporary, thank you. I get my temporary part-time mixed up at times. 2 temporary positions in the streets division. We have some SB1 money coming at us this year. We want to do a little bit more focus with the repair and maintenance of our streets. Building maintenance, worker 1 is in the budget. We currently have a position that is a part-time position. I want to move that to a full-time position. A lot of our focus is to maintain our facilities and our buildings, and with this year's budget, a lot more focus, with kind of creating, kind of a stronger division, with that'll bring us up to 3 individuals, 3 staff people managing our facilities and maintenance. The additional position is a human resource analyst 1/2. We did a lot of discussions and a lot of talk about staffing and what do we provide our staff. Did some research into kind of the ratios of numbers of human resource personnel in a city versus the number of employees that you have. kind of about 1 to 100, one HR person to 100 employees. We're very, way to describe it, very low on the list of over 300 employees, and I mix that full-time, part-time, temporary, and I consider part-time temporary as an employee because it takes just as much time to hire and go through that process. So in order to kind of keep up with kind of the demand, and we're looking at implementing, and it's in our strategic plan, looking at training, onboarding requirements for our employees, risk management, kind of a whole list of stuff that we're doing, but I think we can do better, and I need the staffing to do that. So I'm asking the council to, add a position to help us focus on our employees.
Jean, the 2 temporary positions for Public Works, are those temporary, are they temporary full-time?
Turn that over to
if I may. They are temporary positions in that they're seasonal. They would work full-time, but only for 3 to 4 months.
Okay.
And then they would be retired.
Thank you.
That's good question. And the other things that I'd like to kind of focus on is, and Emily's going to really dig into this, is our unassigned fund balance, and how do we utilize that? And we've talked a lot about the gaps in our vehicles, our building maintenance, our information technology, our parks. For vehicles, building maintenance, and information technology, we're going to recommend establishing some internal service funds to address those, so we can put money aside for kind of the long term. And Emily's going to kind of describe that process and what that would look like, and we'll be coming back to the city council to establish those funds. The other fund that's within that internal service funds is our unfunded pension liability. And really need to ask questions about that. Emily's going to discuss that a little bit more. Our unfunded liability is about $20 million, and our own ongoing on an annual basis is a little over $1 million, thereabouts. So those are some significant dollars that we need to start trying to tackle. How we're going to fund that unfunded pension liability. Future, bringing back the internal service funds, looking at some of our policies in finance over this next year are going to be important. So we're going to keep the discussion in front of the council. My crystal balls tell me we'll be back in front of the council because there's going to be things we missed those contingencies aren't going to be there. Open it up to council questions for me, just kind of big picture. But Emily has a fairly brief PowerPoint that she'd like to just kind of go over some additional numbers.
Questions for the city manager? My only question is regarding the other position, the position for HR, yes. So I was, very surprised at how many HR staff we have. I mean, we only have 2. I mean, Cora and her office
Wave
assistant.
Tony.
Tony. So looking at number of employees in other cities, I was really surprised to find out that even cities much larger than us, Elk Grove, have less employees than we have, but they don't run all of the different areas that we run.
We're pretty heavy on
Like our Parks and Rec.
temporary and part-time, through Parks and Rec, and real aggressive in training, and I like to be a little bit more aggressive, in the training of our employees.
Yeah,
I think it's a value.
One of the issues for me is that, we do have all these temporary and part-time positions. I still would encourage at some point that we look at, and I know that's a future project, it's going to take time, and maybe in this way Cora can get to that higher level of having time to do that, of looking at all of these part-time and temporary, and is there a way of maybe making some of those part-time, combining them into full-time or that sort of thing, just in fairness to our employees, in fairness to, I think sometimes that in the past, I would say that I think that there are some positions that were created as part-time and temporary. I mean, temporary for the pool, absolutely, summertime jobs, we're going to do that, right? But I think sometimes they were created as a cost savings that we really need to evaluate and look at. So that's kind of my comment about that. And I would hope by having this extra position that maybe we would get to looking at that, because I know the council's talked about that before, about looking at those kind of positions. The other thing is that I do realize that temporary and part-time employees, having had a number of them over the years myself, they require just as much time in training and
Yes, they do.
just as much time in onboarding. And even though you say they're part-time and temporary, they require all the same services that full-time employees take. So I think we need to look at the fact that even though we don't, that we have 300 positions. So,
Yeah, the training requirements don't go away. I mean, it's
No.
a liability whether you're part-time or full-time.
And we need to, do that training, and so I do appreciate the consideration on that. And we got excellent staff, here to answer any questions on the budget.
so
Have
any
Emily
other
come out
questions
and
for Jean?
do her presentation.
Well,
Mark
it brings
has-
up more of an observation than a comment, talking about full-time employees and training and what those costs are for training. And I've talked to Gene a little bit about this. I don't mean to blindside you tonight, but I believe that there is merit in looking into a retired annuitant program for the city, particularly for the police department. I believe that not only is there a cost savings, you are bringing on people that have been in the field who have training. Obviously, they would have to be trained locally, but I mean, I think that that is worth a look-see for the city. Other cities do it, and it seems to work, and I don't know what the rest of the council thinks, but I think that if it's something that, fills a need, given that we do incur a lot of overtime in police, and sometimes there's shortage, and sometimes there's not, but I think that it's something to rely on when needed. I'm not saying it has to be implemented all the time.
I think, I would agree that it's something worth looking at, but I know that CalPERS rules have changed significantly regarding retired annuitants than they used to be. So
Yeah, obviously that would have to be evaluated.
have to be researched.
Yeah, my father-in-law did that when he retired from the city of Gilroy as a building inspector. He just did special projects that developers loved it because they had a building inspector who just fell on call. They wanted to schedule.
So Mark, go ahead.
I know we talked about this, but just so we can get it out there. SB1, that's included, the monies we get from that are included in this budget, correct?
Yes, and do you have off the top of your head the dollar amount? It was 400 and some odd thousand?
Pardon me? About $460,000 is estimated to be available for the current year. That number was supposed to be around 160,000. We think in actuality it's going to be about half that, so we're kind of watching closely what's coming out of the Auditor Controller's office.
And in the event that it goes away,
We'll be back here removing it out of the budget and talking to the council about
Okay.
that.
Got a whole list of projects that are more than able to spend it, but
We'll be talking, adopt a pothole program?
We may have to.
we'd have to come back with cuts to our proposed
Yeah.
CIP project list if that funding is no
Question.
longer with us.
Well, it took so many years for the state to finally do something about the unfunded transportation needs and the road needs that I sincerely hope it doesn't go away, so that we
Adopt a
can
pothole
continue to
wasn't
do
working.
those projects to improve our
That's
streets.
very important, the SB1, funds is very important to our communities, so hopefully it stays in place.
Okay. So, Emily? Bye, Sean.
Bye, Sean.
I try to be as discreet as possible as far as to try to slip away.
around this group?
Because I need to go home and drink.
Not going to happen with this place.
Nice try on that.
I think he thinks we're not.
I know the feeling.
Okay.
Snuck
Good
right
evening,
out.
Good evening, Mayor Hewer, members of the council. I'm Emily Boyd, Finance Director, and I'm here tonight to talk about the budget. Sort of a high-level view of the budget. I'm not going to get into the line-by-lines in the budget at all this evening. I'd like to echo Jane's comments about how hard staff works on this. It's a collaborative effort amongst all departments, and we spend months working on it and getting the budget put together. So I would like to thank all the other departments that have worked so hard on it, and in particular, I want to thank the finance staff and just acknowledge them this evening. We have Michelle Neely sitting here in the front row. She handles most of our budget items. She handles the O&M and getting the budget document put together and so forth. Matt Boring, who's sitting behind her, is our payroll specialist. He's also a financial analyst, and he does our personnel cost and does a fine job with that. And sitting next to him is Vera Wittenberg, accounting manager, who has been working on our CIP budget this year. And following this, the next item on the agenda is CIP, and she's going to present that for you. So thank you, all of you. Just a little bit first about what you have in your packet. You have an operating budget that's 335 pages long. You have a CIP budget that's 109 pages long. And I hope you read every page. Now, if you haven't had time to read it, I urge you, members of the council and of the public, to at least read the city manager's transmittal letter. It's at the beginning of the operating budget. It is an executive summary that talks about what's going on with the budgets in the city, what's going on with the economy in the city, what our future forecast looks like, some of the challenges that we have with the PERS unfunded pension liability, and so forth. And it's, I think, essential reading if you want to understand the finances of the city. Jean and Amy this evening talked a good deal about the economic outlook, how we have increased retail development, increased housing development, which drives property taxes, sales taxes, and TOT taxes up. Those are all good news for us. We do have challenges. I mentioned the CalPERS unfunded pension liability. I'll talk in more detail about that in a little while. The general fund subsidies to parks and rec and lighting and landscaping. Those are two challenges that we continue to experience. I'll talk about the parks and recreation in a little while, and also lighting and landscaping. Deferred maintenance, Jean talked a bit about that. And I'll follow up with a little discussion on what an internal service fund is and how it works. So let's start off with the general fund, where the money comes from. You guys' eyesight good enough to see that? Property taxes are by far and away our largest revenue source, 40-something% there. Can't quite read it.
49.
Thank you. I wore the wrong glasses. Sorry about that. The sales taxes are there as the next one at 23%. We have other taxes. Included in the other taxes are the business license fees, transient occupancy tax, the TOT, and also franchise fees. And then there's some other revenue sources with permits and charges for services and so forth. And here's where the money goes. Primarily, the largest chunk of our general fund budget goes for the police department and public safety. The second largest piece of that pie is public works, and that includes streets and engineering and all of those sorts of things. Community development and finance have fairly healthy slices of that pie as well. Finance also includes information technology. So this particular pie chart shows you where the expenditures are by type. And by far and away, personnel costs are the primary expenditure of the city. We have some operations and maintenance costs there, the little bit of the equipment, capital equipment and improvements, and then the unfunded pension liability, which in prior years, unfunded pension liability has been folded into personnel costs. This year, because it has become such an issue, we have pulled it out of personnel costs so that we can see that number distinctly from other costs. The Parks and Recreation Fund, this table shows you each one of their programs, their revenues, their expenses, and the net for the program and what is the general fund subsidy rate. If you look there down at the very bottom right-hand corner, you see that the total subsidy rate is 24.3%. That is extremely good. Most cities, on average, have around a subsidy rate from the general fund to the Parks and Rec programs of around 60, 65, 66%. We are very fortunate here that we have the Galt market, which does fund much of these programs and is the reason why our subsidy is only 24% instead of 60%. I'm not going to read through each one of the programs. This is in the agenda packet. If you want to look at it later and have questions, please let me know. What we have here, this slide and the next slide, this one is facilities and this one is parks maintenance. What we wanted to do was to provide you with total numbers on what are the needs that are funded and unfunded. And these are not just funded by general fund. The funded column is funded by a variety of things. Lighting and landscaping districts are paying for some of it. Impact fees are paying for some of it. And then the general fund is also paying for some of it. The intention of this particular chart is not to show you the funding source. You can find the funding sources in the CIP budget and or in the operations budget. Some of it is in operations rather than CIP. Generally, the parks maintenance includes things like the playgrounds and the fields. And you'll see a park listed on the park side, and you'll see it also listed on the facility side. And that's because the facility side of parks of the maintenance is the restrooms and shade structures and that sort of thing. Like I said, many of these projects are on the CIP list. And primarily, we want to show you what are the efforts being made to address some of the issues that have been brought before the council. We have a lot of problems, a lot of issues in Parks and Recreation that we saw, and we're making an effort to address that. And as well in the facilities, where we have been talking for a year and a half, 2 years, about how our facilities maintenance is far behind schedule. Vehicles is another item where we have deferred expenditures and as a result have fallen sort of behind. This particular table shows you the age of the city's fleet. 38% of the fleet is 5 years old, and the rest of it is older than 5 years. So while I'm here on the vehicle slide, let me talk a little bit about a vehicle internal service fund and how that works. What we will need to do is we will need to seed the fund with some amount of money from general fund available fund balance and from other funds that are going to participate in the internal service fund. We'll seed it with a certain amount. We will set up a policy that governs how vehicles are purchased, replaced, how long, what their useful life is, and what the lease payments are going to be. And the lease payments is the charge back to the department or the fund for the vehicle. So that money is set aside each year. If you have a vehicle, for instance, that has a 5-year life, you set aside money each year for 5 years, and then you have enough money at the 5th year to purchase a replacement vehicle. Now, we do not have sufficient funding here in the city to catch up on all of these vehicles at once. It's just the scope of the problem is just too large. So we will be bringing back to the council a proposal for an internal service fund for vehicles replacement, and it will contain a phase-in period of maybe 3 to 5 years. We've been crunching those numbers and trying to figure out what is going to actually be feasible, and then we'll bring it to you to consider.
Emily, so just so I understand,
Sure.
so you'll be coming back with us a policy, and as part of that policy, we're going to decide, I mean, council will give direction on the policy on I'm sure that some vehicles have a much longer life
Correct.
expectancy than other vehicles. I mean,
That's correct.
like I said, my husband drives the 15-year-old vehicle, and he thinks it's perfectly fine. Not okay with me. I wouldn't do it. So we don't agree on the life of a vehicle.
Right.
But, so we're going to come back and we'll be able to give input on
Absolutely.
staff's
Yes.
recommendations regarding the life of a vehicle and when vehicles need to be looked at being replaced.
Exactly. The policy itself will contain categories of vehicles, whether it's a police vehicle, a safety vehicle, or whether it's a maintenance truck. Different vehicles have different projected lifespans.
I
Might.
assume mileage plays into that and age.
Yes, I was just going to say mileage does play into it, particularly in some of the cars that are used a lot. They're going to run up their mileage faster than others. So it's a bit complicated, and the policy that we'll bring to you will have a schedule of useful life. And also, when you start looking at vehicle replacement, you can project what vehicles you're going to replace and when you're going to replace them. But you can't control the what-ifs. If there is, unfortunately, an accident and a vehicle is totaled, you would be replacing it prior to likely the end of its useful life because it arrived at it due to the accident and so forth. So there has to be some flexibility built into it, into the plan. The idea or the intention is to bring to you a policy for your review and also a proposal for initial seed funding for you to consider and provide direction on and/or approve the seed funding and the establishment of the fund.
And we don't always replace vehicles with new vehicles, correct? I mean,
no.
Yeah,
we
know
haven't.
We've in the past bought and purchased used vehicles at a substantial discount, but they were a good deal because they had low mileage and they met the needs.
That's correct.
So we're not always talking about purchasing new vehicles, but sometimes we need to replace some of our older vehicles.
That's correct. We have been using the government surplus program to replace vehicles and been able to get some vehicles in relatively good shape for a very decent price.
Okay, thank you.
So any questions before I move on to unfunded pension liability on internal service funds? Any other questions on that? So let's talk a little bit about pensions. This particular little graphic shows you by way of water flowing in and water flowing out, shows you the process of how pensions are funded and how they are spent. So we have three sources of funding for pensions, and that's the employee contributions, the employer contributions, and the investment income. And of course, all of that is used to, the outflow is all to employees, retired employees on their benefits. What the CalPERS did recently, that we've all been hearing a considerable amount about, is that they reduced the discount rate. And that means that their projection of how much investment income they can earn has been reduced. And when they reduce that, when you have less water coming out of that tap, one of the other two taps is going to have more water coming out of it in order to equalize those benefits because those are not going to change. Employee contributions are not going to change either. So the employer contributions increase. So less investment income, more employer contribution. This bar chart here shows you what the pension liability is projected to be over the next 8 years. The red is, or the yellow is the miscellaneous funds. This is listed by funds rather than by pension plan. The city has three types of pension plans. There's the safety plan, there's the miscellaneous plan, which is everybody else, and then there are the PEPPER plans that came about as a result of the 2012 pension reform. So this is listed by the impacted funds. So the yellow is the general fund, the Parks and Rec, and Measure R. And those are put together because those are basically, the general fund and the Parks and Rec are discretionary spending, and Measure R is there because it's part of the safety program. And then the other funds, the impact to the other funds. You'll see that over the years, about a period of about 8 years, it goes from $1 million a year, the city's obligation to pay towards unfunded liability, to $2 million a year. And that's a really pretty big, that's a pretty big hit. Doubling in a matter of a few years like that is going to be challenging to meet that. One of the things that, and I'll get into long-term financial planning in a minute, but one of the things that we projected that is going to enable us to meet that requirement is going to be new development in town. And as a result of new development, your property taxes and your sales taxes increase, and those are general fund revenues, which will help us meet that demand.
So, Emily, would you
Yes.
explain for the public what the change was that CalPERS did?
Yes, they reduced the discount rate. That had been 7.5% for many, many years. The discount rate is that rate of return on investments. And they took it from 7.5 down to 7.0 over a period of 3 years. Now, I contend that if they had done it over a longer period of time, the impact would be more manageable for cities. It's a bit of a strain to manage that. And I know that Galt has been positioned in a bit better than some of our neighboring cities, but it is a difficult thing. So when they reduce the interest rate, like I was saying with this little graphic here, if there's less water coming in from the investment faucet, there's going to have to be more water coming in from the employer contribution faucet.
Thank you.
Also, and you and I talked earlier about this, the assumption that these costs would be covered through new development, property taxes and sales taxes, that may or may not occur. We don't know.
That's correct.
But I think that if that is what we're going to rely on to offset this deficit, we need to establish policy on what we do with revenue generated from new development and new sales tax. Because if it gets commingled into the general fund, it will then be spent. And you had
Yes.
indicated that some jurisdictions have established trust accounts.
Correct.
Again, I don't know a whole lot about the trust account. I know what a trust account is and the way what you explained to me, but I think that's a discussion that this council should have, as well as policy direction on how we treat new revenue. Because if we don't address it, I think we will continue year to year and just see this deficit increase.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you, and that is an item that we are planning to bring back to the council at soon. Many cities, as you said, have set up retirement trust funds, which means they set aside money to pay increases like that in their pension contribution requirement. These trust funds are irrevocable. The money put into them can only be used to pay pensions, and because of the nature of it, it's a section, I think, 115 IRS rule on these. Because of the nature of it, we can invest in more aggressive investments than we can as the city. So where Sean is able to get us 2%, we might be able to get 2.5% on something that's invested in these trust funds. So what we need to look at and bring back to the council is a proposal on the trust funds, if the council is so inclined to go that direction. If we do, we would want to then seed that as well, use some of our available fund balance in the general fund to seed that to get it started. We would also want to have that conversation about what do we contribute to it and how and when do we contribute to it. And so it's not really a standalone conversation because those additional revenues are not distinct. So it's a little bit complicated, but it is definitely a conversation we need to have, and the council needs to make a policy decision about how they want to address it. We'll get into long-term financial slides here in a moment, but the assumptions made about increases in property and sales tax are based upon current projects that are in the pipeline. They're not any projects that are, well, maybe someday we'll develop this. None of that is included. It's ones that are currently working with the planning department, and they're viable projects that we expect to go forward.
This unfunded liability, this information comes from CalPERS directly.
That's correct. Yes.
They tell us this is your
yes
unfunded liability, or this is what your liability.
That's correct.
And a lot of our employees are, I mean, a major part of our employee base is our law enforcement, and so they all fall under the safety retirement.
Correct.
The other thing is that do we get? It was very surprising for me when I joined council to find out that our city paid into Social Security for all of our employees, including our safety employees.
Yes.
I haven't seen elsewhere that safety employees paid into, or that employers paid into Social Security for safety employees, and that employees then are also paying into Social Security. So is there any change in the pension liability based upon the fact that our employees are able to collect Social Security at retirement time, or at 62, 65, whatever they choose? Or is there any change in our liability based on the Social Security issue?
No, there is no change to the employer contribution. The effect of having both Social Security and CalPERS is that there will be, for the individual retiring, there will be some offsets. And you'll need to talk, each individual employee should talk to CalPERS about what those are. If you've paid into Social Security, it does offset a little bit your CalPERS benefits. It varies, and I don't really want to go into that, but it's...
No, I just was just curious. I mean,
Yeah.
just kind of, because the Social Security issue always does come up. And I mean, just because I can't find another city that's paying into Social Security. And Tom can tell you that, you know, that we tried many years ago to get out of it. That's
correct.
We can't.
Yes, we did.
But, so I just was wondering, okay.
Yeah, no, it won't make any difference to the employer. Unfortunately, the employer still has to continue to make that contribution.
Yeah, because we do pay a substantial amount into Social Security
That's
for each of our
correct.
employees. Okay.
We do.
I want to say it's something like maybe 4 cities in the whole state that didn't get out of
Yeah.
Social Security when they had a chance or something.
Yeah, there's...
Not very many.
I think you can count them on one hand. There's just a few.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move into long-term financial forecasting. Anything else that anyone wants to talk about on pensions before we move on? Well, I guess I'm going to talk about fund balance before I get into long-term. I turned too many pages in my notes. So one of the things I wanted to point out is that we added another page in the schedules. At the end of Schedule 4 in the operating budget, the summary schedules, at the end of Schedule 4, we included a schedule that shows you where these fund balances come from. We pulled them from audited numbers from the last audited period, which was the audit as of June 30th, 17. So we pull those numbers, and then we look at items that need to be reserved or subtracted from the fund balance in order to arrive at what we call the unassigned or available fund balance. Now, the total audited fund balance in the general fund was $10.2 million. That does not mean that there's $10.2 million available to spend. This is a list, a little table on the left shows you what comprises the $10.2 million. There's a small amount of non-spendable. Those are things like inventories and prepaids and that sort of thing. The committed fund balance at 4.3 is the economic reserve. That's 25% of the expenditures of the general fund and the Parks and Rec fund. That's recalculated each year when we adopt a new budget. We recalculate it. And then there's the subsidy to the Parks and Rec fund. And then the remainder, that $4.4 million, is unassigned or available. So when we prepare the Schedule 4 and we're preparing how much money do you have versus how much money do you need to spend to see where you come out, our beginning balance is that available fund balance that's carried forward, the $4.4 million. So on the Schedule 4, it says, here's your available balance at the beginning, here's your revenues and your transfers in, here's your total available to spend, and then here's your operations and maintenance cost, here's your minor capital, here's your CIP projects, here's your transfers out, and here's what's left. So that schedule is a fairly critical schedule in understanding the overview of each of the funds of the city because they are all listed on there. The funds that are budgeted are listed there. The middle section there shows you the numbers on the left just in a bar. And you'll see that the majority of that, the top portion is the 4.4 that's available, and then the center sort of yellow is the Parks and Rec subsidy, and then down below that is the 4.3 on the committed amount, the reserves. One thing that we wanted to remind the council of is the needs, the unfunded needs over here on the right-hand side. Vehicles, that's not the total need, but that's a fairly immediate need. Building maintenance and the parks improvements, that's $3.7 million. So if we were to try to catch up everything at once, we would expend almost all of our unassigned or unavailable balance. And I think that what we need to do is to be thoughtful about how we spend that and to develop plans for spending that will enable us to be sustainable financially over the long run. And ways to do that are setting up a pension trust, setting up a vehicle internal service fund, and so forth. That dollar amount, the unassigned available, is one-time money. And so you really should only spend it for one-time things, because you can't really spend it for ongoing expenses because it's not revenue, it's not coming back, it's just a one-time money. Like if you had a savings account and you spent all your savings account, it's gone then. Nothing's going to replenish it.
So Emily,
Yes.
our revenues and our expenditures are fairly close. The audited amount ended up being fairly close.
Correct.
I don't know, within, was a couple $100,000.
Yeah.
So it ended up being very close. So can you kind of explain where did this unassigned money come from?
Yes.
Because we balance the budget each year, the revenues and expenditures. So how did we end up with 4.4 unassigned?
Okay. So the city has been carrying a general fund balance for many years. I went back to as far as 2011. In 2011, we had an audited fund balance of $8 million. And roughly over all of the subsequent years, it has been roughly $8 million every year as the audited fund balance. Now, every year, not all of that was considered available. The calculation on the reserves was done, and then the amount put into your Schedule 4 as your beginning available balance that you could include in your expenditures was put in there, and it ran most of the time, I think around $4 million, and the rest of it was reserved.
We generally started each budget year with about 4 million unassigned historically.
Approximately that, I think, is a fairly reasonable statement to make. The balance has been there, and the balance is what is left over after revenues minus expenses. Like last year, you may remember in the end of fiscal year 17, we had a significant amount of revenues greater than expenditures. Some of that was due to one-time monies, notably the repayment of the $1 million that the DOF made us pay. We got that back. So when our revenues exceed our expenditures, then it adds a little bit to that $8 million. And when our expenditures exceed our revenues, then it subtracts a little bit from that $8 million. But by and large, the city has had a fairly constant general fund balance for at least a decade.
You and I talked about this today because I was going through the budget and I was looking for, where's the committed revenue?
Right.
Well, you have to do a mathematical calculation in order to find out what that is.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked with Emily. I don't know why we wouldn't have it as a line item. I mean, because it's nowhere in the budget, other than if you figure it out yourself.
Right, you would have to do the math. I think we can present it better.
Yeah.
I think that's Schedule 4, and in many cities in their budgets, they have the total fund balance, and then they do that, show you right there what's reserved and then what's available. And we can present this better in subsequent years, and we will do that.
Okay.
So, because I know historically, the city has been very, has attempted to be really fiscally responsible and really very fiscally conservative.
Very conservative.
I agree with that policy. I think it's what saved us during the recession, during the Great Recession. If prior councils, when Mr. Molson's council, if they had not been as fiscally conservative as they were, we would not have went into that in as good a shape as we did. And as I've said before, I don't worry about today, but every economist I talk to talks about 2020 being very iffy. And the unfunded liability being part of that, the pension liability, but the other part just being, where the economy will be in 2020, because we have ups and downs.
Right.
So, I just appreciate the fact that historically we've been very conservative about this, and about the fact of how you spend one-time money, that revenues and expenditures should be, as they are, very close, so that one-time money is just one-time money, and that's, in my opinion, how we stay more fiscally stable.
Yeah, I
And
would agree.
the way city funds and budgets work is you have a recession and the city may not feel the full impact of it for a year. And then to recuperate from that may take them another couple of years while the economy's booming. It's just What I'm saying is the city's lag.
Yes, that's correct.
And so that's why I'm committed to reserves.
Well, no, because, I mean, and so that, the 25% that we have for economic, uncertainty, that reserve is exactly for that, to stabilize in case we do end up with problems or a catastrophe or
Right.
a crisis, as compared to the unassigned, which is one-time money that could be there for those emergencies that might arise that aren't economic.
Correct. And it could also be there for handling some of the one-time
Expenditures.
obligations that we have.
Like the parks, like doing something about the parks.
Correct. When I look at that graphic and I see, well, I have 4.4 is unassigned and we have 3.7 calculated need at this point in time, I wouldn't recommend doing all of that all at once anyway. I mean, even if we had the capacity to do it, because it would be, I think, fiscally irresponsible to drain down the unassigned without having a thoughtful, planned out financial plan for it. We would need to look at that unfunded liability. And we would need to look at how much we want to set aside for ISS funds and so forth. I think we need to continue to be prudent here in Galt, as you point out, has been the case for many years now.
One other comment. Emily, you've mentioned internal service funds for vehicles.
Correct.
But you also, discussions, we had with, you and the city manager.
Right.
Also thinking of doing something very similar in the building maintenance too.
Correct. Facility maintenance would operate in a very similar way to vehicles, and vehicles would be charged back to departments and programs based upon the vehicles that they actually use. In building facilities, you would set up a similar internal service fund where you would need to seed it with a certain amount of money, and then you would charge back or lease back to departments and programs based upon the amount of space that they're using. So if you're using, 100 square feet of space, you're going to pay back a different amount than somebody who's using 500 square feet of space. So it's very similar. And also information technology can be handled in the same way, and we'll probably recommend that as well. On information technology, the calculator is the number of devices supported. So you have an internal service fund for information technology that charges back to departments and programs based upon the number of devices that are supported.
So the purpose being that when it comes time for replacement or upgrades, that we aren't having to scramble to get it out of the current budget.
Right.
We're able to have an internal fund
Right.
that would be able to, putting away money for
future need
for those areas.
Like the air conditioning in the council chambers.
Roofs. I have to tell you, down there, I was frozen. Up here, I'm so hot I can't even tell you. Except my feet are still frozen.
Oh, we have.
Because it's one of the things that we've spent a lot of time talking about, and not to pick on parks, but we spent a lot of time talking about parks and building maintenance in the last few months.
We have.
And, and our need and council's belief and staff's belief that there wasn't money put away for these things. And now we need to figure out how to bring ourselves back up. And this would be a way for future councils and future citizens not to have to worry about having
That's correct.
parks that have needs that we can't take care of.
Every year, those needs are the toughest things to deal with in the budget. I mean, every year there's a need. What has been happening is there's a need and there's a scramble for vehicles. Every year there's a need and there's a scramble to get, a new generator or the roof repaired or what have you. But if you are thoughtful and prudent about how you set aside money to meet those needs, then you don't have that scramble every year. You have the money sitting there when you need the new roof. Now, same as for vehicles, building maintenance, because we are so far behind, it's going to take 3 to 5 years to phase in and get that program working so that it's really routine and everything is replaced on a very routine manner, because we're not going to be able to replace it all at once.
But the idea being that in 5 years, we can look back and know that we started making an effort to be proactive instead of reactive to
Correct.
some of these things.
Correct. That's the goal. So I'll move on here. I have, get to the right page. We have 3 slides here that talk about the general fund forecast. And they each contain different scenarios. The assumptions that are made in these forecasts are listed in the city manager's transmittal letter. If anyone wants to look for them over there. I think, any kind of financial plan is only as good as the assumptions that are made. I think that we have some very reasonable conservative assumptions here. This first slide talks about what would happen to the general fund with the development that we currently have online in the pipeline, the increases in property and sales tax with that development. The red line, the upper red line is the expenditures. The green line right beside the red line, which is almost impossible to see, is the revenues. And the line at the bottom is the general fund balance. Now, we know that over time, our general fund balance is going to decline. There's really no way to get around it. That unfunded pension liability is going to force it into a decline. But our question to be answered is how far will it decline, and what do we do now to try and manage it? And so if we look at this, just the general fund projection with the development, property and sales tax forecast that we developed, at the end of the period of 2025, the ending fund balance would be 7.7. Right now we have the 10.2, and then it would be 7.7. So it would go down, providing that the assumptions, nobody can foretell the future accurately, but these are the best assumptions that we can make. And we didn't do these ourselves. We turned to various resources. We talked to HDL, the sales tax advisor. We talked about both sales tax and property tax. We talked to HDL does also the economic forecasts, and we talked to them about increases in property values. We talked to Sacramento County, the assessor's office, about increases in property values so that we could come up with some fairly reasoned projections. Now, this particular table shows the general fund projection with that same development, property, and sales tax forecast and the subsidies to Parks and Rec and L&Ls. Now, we will probably continue to subsidize Parks and Rec. Most cities do. I really don't or wouldn't recommend that we close down the Parks and Rec program. It's one of the best features of this city, and I enjoy living here, and that's one of the reasons. The L&Ls are two of them are upside down. The third one is headed for upside down, and that's something that we are going to have to address at some point. It's been a situation that has been ongoing for quite a while. The problem is that the assessments in 2 of the L&Ls do not have escalators in them. So inflation causes costs to go up, but the revenues are flat. So what's going to happen? Your costs are going to exceed your revenues. And at some point, we're going to have to address that and figure out what we're going to do.
So this forecast is probably pretty much what we have today.
Yeah,
because we're subsidizing Parks and Rec, and we're subsidizing the L&Ls today.
This is the one that I would call the where we are now.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then this last slide is without development. Let's say all development stopped. What would happen? Our revenues are not going to increase as much, and we're still going to have subsidies to Park and Rec and subsidies to the L&L, so the ending fund balance at 2025 is going to be $2.8 million. Now, that's kind of going to be, we're now entering into the ouch. That's really not where you want to be. If we know that 25% or 1/4 of a year's cost between the general fund and the Parks and Rec fund, we know that's about $4 million. And to be prudently responsible, we'd want to keep at least a 1/4 of a year's in reserve. And if our fund balance falls to 2.8, we haven't got it. And so, that's something that we're going to have to continue to address. Now, remember
If
that's
happened, that's where you start looking at when we might have to cut services. and reduce services and do all of
Well, I
this.
don't
I think
think
there's
you wait
no-
till then.
Yeah, I don't think it'd be before that.
You need to, I think, proactively, evaluate what alternatives are there, because, it,
Prior to it coming down?
yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you've spent down to this level, you still have no solution, and you're scrambling. So I
Yeah.
think that we need to,
I think the trigger would be, in this scenario right here, would be 2020.
2020, this is always.
Well, one of
Or
the,
sooner.
yeah.
But because everything lags, we probably wouldn't realize it as a city until 2020.
Right. So we are on a fairly conservative pathway here. If we're going to say this is the where we are now scenario, with the development that's already in the pipeline continues and comes to fruition, and the subsidies to Parks and Rec and the L&Ls continue, this is where we are now. I think this is something that we need to evaluate regularly, and you'll have to remember that this is a long-range forecast, and so we don't really know
We really don't have the
happen in
crystal ball.
2025. I don't have a crystal ball. If I did, I would play the lottery. Yeah.
well, and when you look at, when you look at Schedule 4 for the lighting landscape, the northeast area at least, you've got a fund balance as of July 1st of last year, it was $144,000. They're showing a fund balance of 6/30/2020 of a negative $525,000. So we know where it's headed. I mean, I don't know that we want to wait 3 years or whatever
To do something about lighting and landscaping?
I think we
No.
need to address it.
I actually discussed this with staff, and I actually see in probably the next year or sooner, we're probably going to see three things come back. And that's going to be the internal service funds and what policies we want to set there. We're going to see the CalPERS, the elephant in the room, and the trusts, and what we're going to do there, and then how we're going to address the L&Ls.
I see
I
those
don't
as
think
the
we
three,
scratched the surface with that.
I agree, those are three priorities.
Those are the three things I see coming back. Oh, yeah. Pretty soon.
I agree.
I think Emily would agree.
Yes, I would. Any other comments or questions on the long-term forecast? That's the conclusion of the formal presentation. I do have a request for the council to adopt the resolution. And I do have one addition to the resolution that I would like, if you do choose to adopt it, that you would include in your motion. Under Section 3, we need to add at the end of that a phrase that says, as well as additional budgets approved by the council on May 15 for Beautification Committee, Commission on Aging, and Galt Youth Commission. Because those were approved on the 15th, they didn't quite get in here, so we need to formalize that. It's a matter of getting the paperwork done.
Thank you for adding that in.
Oh, yeah, I showed it to him.
Any other questions for me?
Well, I did have a question, so. The Parks and Rec, when we go back to the Parks and Rec issue, the multi-year parks maintenance issue, I just kind of have a question. It was brought to my attention today, Armando, and maybe you can just answer this for me quickly, that the community park has had to be revised, and part of the new equipment, we weren't able to fund it. The swings?
We put together a priority list through the Parks and Rec Commission. We had an engineer's estimate. We were over that estimate of approximately $25,000, which did not include a swing. I've requested to see where we are with the fund balance because we were able to save some money without having to put in the soft pour in place. We were able to use engineered wood fiber. So if we have enough money left, I'd like to put in that swing. But at this point, we need to see exactly what the balance is of the approved budget of $120,000.
Okay, so that was the approved budget for this budget year. So in next year's budget, when we talk about some of these issues about giving some money for for some of the parks, the money.
Yes,
that we're
this is one of the issues I'd like
Would
to
that be
address.
one
if
of the
it's-
items that would be included then, that we would look at? That
If there is not money
In
left
this
over
budget
now,
year.
yes.
In that project?
Yes.
Would you be looking at funding it for next year?
Yes, I would.
Okay, thank you. It's our largest, it's not our in Walker, but, we're putting all the new equipment in. It seems a shame not to have the swings too. Oh, questions? Discussion? I just want to really thank staff, because this is a really lean budget. All of the departments took cuts on their maintenance and operation budgets. I just really appreciate the fact, council took a cut too. We took a cut to our travel fund, but that's manageable. So I just really appreciate the work that Emily and her staff have done, and the fact that the staff really are looking at what is a real budget and what can we spend. I know everybody it didn't start out a few months ago looking as good as it looks tonight.
That's true. We've done a lot of work on it.
Well, I guess I'll jump in with my comments, why not?
I'd recommend maybe asking for public comment
Oh, sure.
first.
Open for public comment?
There you go.
No public comment? Okay, go on. There you go.
Fair enough. I would also like to thank staff. It has been mentioned, it's been mentioned numerous times that they've been going through this process for a while. I believe if you read the executive summary, it's been 6 revisions that they've gone through with staff before we got here tonight. It's what's called a status quo budget, meaning that there's no fat in it. And that's where we're going to see a lot of items come back, I would assume, and it would be, again, public venue, public comment on those items as we go through this, because this is just a budget. It's not cast in concrete. It's going to change for all kinds of reasons. It's just a staff's, after 6 go-arounds, best guess what we got, okay? I spent, I don't know, how many hours was it, Gene? Was it 2.5, 3? I don't know. I tried to beat Mark's time with staff.
Each one of the council members.
Between all the council?
Each one of the council members also had a time in the
Yeah,
bucket.
each one of us met with the city manager and the finance director and went over the budget, more line by line than.
Yes. And I'm approaching this as, since we're as a city council, we set policy, so I'm looking at this more of a policy at this point, because as items change, as we progress through the year and things come back, we're going to get a lot more detail in a lot of other areas. We talked about internal service funds, which I'm sure staff will be bringing those back to discuss with the vehicle and the building maintenance and the IT programs. CalPERS, we mentioned that, or beat that to death. Looked at long-term forecast. This is a 2-year budget, but as you can see, staff's forecasting out to be 2025, mainly because in 2 years, the way city budgets work, you could be in deep trouble in 2 years, and it may take you another 6 to get out of it. Of course, lighting landscaping districts. I'm not sure with the Prop 13 and the 218 issue. There's got to be solutions. Okay? And I'm sure staff is looking at that, and we'll probably see that coming back, I would assume. And then I also looked at our safety budget, basically police, and that's not only funded by general funds, but it's also funded by Measure R, Community Facility District, and AB 3229. So one of my questions would be, well, what happens if all those funds dry up? It's worst case scenario, but as policymakers, we can't sit here and say, you know, gee, nothing's going to happen. So you've got to ask those kind of questions. And I believe we'll probably be getting some back from staff too, saying, you know, this will probably never happen, but if it does, this is how bad it'll look, just so we have an idea. So hopefully moving forward, I mean, right now, it's not gloom and doom, it's kind of status quo. Hopefully it works out this way. In the comments.
Mark?
Next.
I was going to say, I don't know about the doom and gloom, but it's definitely gloom. My biggest concern, and it falls on the same things Kurt was talking about, and also Tom, is that we do need to find a way of getting around these lighting and landscaping, getting them funded and keeping them funded. I mean, looking over this, 7 of the parks in this community, well, I should say 5, and I'm still trying to figure out why 14% of 2 of them are L&Ls, are part of the L&Ls, and that's a serious drain on Parks and Recreation, and therefore it's going to be a serious drain as far as general fund is concerned. It's definitely something we need to bring out as a council and see if there's a way we can get around it and get it funded.
Paige, any comments?
I just want to congratulate staff. I really appreciate that you're looking to the future and that you're, instead of spending all the money on all the dire needs we have right now, trying to perpetuate some money so we can meet those needs as they come up and not always feel like we're in a dire straits. And I don't know if the public caught that, but that's really nice planning for the future, and I really appreciate that.
Anything else, Kurt?
I just appreciate staff's efforts. It's a difficult process. I've been through it. I know exactly what they went through, and it's no fun. And I've made all my comments known already.
Okay. Okay.
I brought my money tied just in case. So.
Do I have a motion? It wasn't a public hearing. I just have a comment. We have a motion?
I'll move to adopt the budget with the Section 3 additions that Emily mentioned.
Yes, that would be including the addition of the Beautification Committee, Galt Youth Commission, and the Commission on Aging budgets that were previously approved at the meeting on May 15th.
I knew you had that information. Yes.
I'll second. We have a motion. We have a second. Motion by Councilmember Mawson, second by Councilmember Lamson. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz.
Aye.
Councilmember Mawson.
Names right, yeah.
Aye.
Councilmember Campion.
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson.
Aye.
Mayor Hewer.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote. I have a request to move N1 up. So if we can go ahead and
Historical
take.
Society.
We can go ahead and take N1 before we do the CIP budget. So the Galt Area Historical Society requests extension of Community Benefit Funding Grant 2017-2018. Donna?
At the meeting of May 15th, the Galt Area Historical Society gave the required annual report on the grant to City Council, and at the same time, asked City Council to consider carrying over the $17,000 into the next fiscal year. Another option would be to modify the grant funding agreement to include the design of the McFarland Living History Ranch Barn project, thereby allowing the society to reimburse the expenses incurred during this fiscal year. We also have Janice Barsetti for the Galt Area Historical Society. If you want to say a few words.
Want to come on up, Janice?
Real quickly, what would it take in order to modify the request to include the engineering?
To include the design.
The design. Well,
right now, it's just the construction.
Yeah, construction. I understand you can broaden the definition and you can also narrow it, but I guess my question is, what would be the because it was their request for construction?
Correct.
Is that what it?
That's how they wrote the grant.
And we did not, and that definition didn't include design.
Correct.
I get you. Okay.
Little did we know that obviously you can't do anything without an architect engineer. So that's where we're at. I am prepared tonight to give you the total 17,000 invoices that we have spent already with architects and engineers, if you would accept that option, and then we can clear this up, tonight. So, but as I did say a couple weeks ago, we did ask for an extension of both those grants. One was 10,000, one was 7,000, total of 17. To date, we spent $18,625 with the architect. But right now, at this process, we're right now ready to start interviewing contractors, and the county will be getting the permits. So we're ready to go pretty much at this stage, but it's still going to take, months before you're going to probably see any type of building. But we would like to have the modification. That would be the most important to us, and then we can just clear up these grants right now. So.
What's the total projected cost for the whole project?
When we met with the engineer, along with the landscape engineers, plumbing and lighting, we're about at 1.6 million. So yeah, so we're still searching for grants because we're probably at about 700,000 right now, and so but we're going to go for as far as we can go. So, and then continue with the grants.
And so you're right. I mean, you've got the architectural and engineering all done. You're just ready to start.
Yeah, Mike Smith Engineering. Yeah. So.
And that's a little over 18 grand.
Well, that's at his point. I mean, we still have more because he'll actually be continuing on with us, and he'll be helping us working through the contractors because we'll probably start getting lots of contractors wanting to bid this, and he'll be helping us screen some of these out. So he'll be on the project with us throughout the entire.
Well, last time I was involved in things like this, my other job, I found it ran usually about 6% thereabouts for the engineering architectural fees based on a large project. Mm-hmm. The larger the project, of course, the less the percentage. But around $1 million,
because we still total at this point. His total fare was $46,000, so we've paid $18,000. I mean, he's charging us as we go along. I mean, he's not hitting us with the whole amount right now. So that would be the most the agreeable thing to us if we could just clear it up right now, and I'm prepared to give Donna the receipts for all the checks tonight. So
I just have a comment. We sat here the last 2 years. I mean, I made the motion last year to give you the $10,000. I by no means ever thought it was just going to construction. I really, in my heart, believed that it was going to the project as a whole.
Me too.
that it was never that it was just for wooden nails or whatever.
Yeah,
it was taking that it really was a contribution to the project as a whole. That I understood that you were still in the process of getting money, that you were still in the process of getting grants and donations and working through the process. But this was just to help because I truly believe that event center will bring in TOT, will bring it, the weddings that you're holding at McFarland. McFarland is doing, besides just the fact of preserving our history, it's also doing a lot for economic development in the city, and I think that's one of the big things when we talk about the grant, the community grant, that we really need to be looking at grants that really do improve the economic development and the economic forecast for the city, and I think this project does that. So I would absolutely be in favor of amending it and getting it off the books and letting you move forward with what needs to happen. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate that. I like to always just say it's not just always about an event center because it is part of a learning center too because we do have pioneer days out there and sometimes the weather's not right, but we have a lot of plans for the inside to have classes and stuff. So I think it's going to be a great project.
Well, I think it's just great for the community as a whole. It's a wonderful project.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I agree. I would just
entertain a motion.
Entertain a motion to bring this back. Well, we can't.
Can we just approve the amendment?
It would be a motion to amend the agreement to allow both construction materials, including architecture and design, to
include design costs would be great. Yeah.
Exactly what the city attorney said. That's
okay. I will second.
I'll second it.
You're seconding it? Okay. So motion by Councilmember Campion, second by Councilmember Molson. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Molson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye. Passes 5-0 vote.
Great,
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you so much. Donna, I'll give you this and you let me know if there's something. Okay. Thank you. Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're excited. Okay, back to item.
CIP.
Yeah, back to item L3. Review of the proposed capital improvement program budget fiscal years
Oh, you got this whole
2018,
thing.
2019 through 2022, 2023, with 2017 and 2018 adjustments.
Mayor Hewer, Vera Wittenberg, Accounting Manager, is going to present this item.
Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Hewer and council members. I'm Vera Wittenberg with the accounting manager, one of the accounting managers in the finance department. I'm going to be presenting to you the proposed 2019 to 2023 capital improvement project. So an overview of the CIP is it's a long-range budget. It's going to look at the next 5 years of needs for the city's infrastructure. And we even look at what's beyond 5 years. It's a detailed 5-year cost and funding estimates budget. It gets reviewed annually by the city and also annually by the Planning Commission. So it does go annually to the Planning Commission. And then you, the City Council, will receive quarterly updates from Public Works on what projects have been completed and the status of each project. In total, the CIP includes 61 projects. These projects are either future projects, current, or projects that were completed since the last budget that we brought to you in midterm. It's $518.3 million in total. 106 of that was spent prior. So these are projects that we just completed or projects that are completing this year. We have $13.4 million that we're spending this year and 20 for the budget that's being presented to you tonight. It's $20.5 million. 3.7 of that will be spent in 19 and then 1.8 in 20. The other 15 is for the next 3 years after that. And then we have $378 million in needs that go beyond the next 5 years. Right now, projects that were completed, we had C Street, Complete Streets Project, Walker Park, their soccer field lights were completed, and then the parapet was sighting at Littleton. We had pedestrian enhancements that were also completed this year. Right now, Public Works is working on the South Galt Safe Routes to School and Rehab, the Deep Well. They're working on the community park and the McFarland lift station.
Can I interrupt just for a second so I don't totally confuse the audience and the public? We've been talking about general fund monies. These aren't general fund monies.
There are some.
There is
some general fund, but most of it's going to come from impact or other funds or grant money.
Correct.
So this is all citywide, not just general fund.
Right. But percentage-wise, there's most of it is not general fund.
Most of it is not. I think in Emily's slide, it was like 3% of general funds money was actually on capital.
Okay.
And this is all mostly with other funds.
Yeah, because we're talking, 10 million, 4 million in the general fund, and now all of a sudden, where'd this money come from?
Yes, and the future years, they are not technically funded at the moment. Those are future needs. So this is just the needs of what the city actually has.
Thank you.
No problem.
Doesn't mean they're going to happen.
No, it doesn't mean they're going to happen. Actually, I've been here now for a little over 2 years, and this year we moved a lot of the projects we thought we were going to be doing these next 2 years, and we pushed them out to be on CIP. So it's just a moving target. Right now we have projects that are under design. 4th Street, I think, was brought to you like 2 weeks ago. They presented some options. The Transit Operation Maintenance Center, and then the library expansion. This next list is the general improvement. It's a category of CIP that includes a range of projects that will either enhance, improve, or construct general city facilities. It's also projects related to safety, public safety, community improvements. This is where you're going to see some of the general fund money. Some will be here, but not all. It actually has funding from other sources as well. There's also some of these projects, just because they're listed here, does not mean that we actually have any current projects for this next 2-year budget. It could be that they're in beyond CIP. But it is a project.
Because they're here doesn't mean they're funded.
Exactly. They're here just because they are an active CIP. Doesn't mean that we're actually having anything going on the next 2 years in them.
Yeah, some of this stuff is, some of these projects are fed in from the strategic plan.
Correct.
And prioritized.
Yeah,
So
so
it's
all the
kind of a-
master plans
yes,
get pulled
kind
in
of a
together
mesh of
into
the
our
two.
CIP.
Kind of our wish list.
The strategic plan, yeah.
So on Parks and Rec, there are 11 projects on our list. They include improvements, renovations, and new construction of city parks and rec facilities, as well as any major landscaping projects. They would fall into this category. Same thing here. There's some general fund money, but most of this is going to be your impact fees that are going to be here. As far as transportation, right now there's 12 CIP projects on the list. They are for roadway improvements, pedestrian and bicycle facilities, and transit programs. We did change up some of the CIP numbering systems last year, and so you'll see now that some of the CIPs have a longer number, and that's just so you can know which fiscal year we're planning or started the project. Water. So in prior years, there were several major projects in water, and those were completed. And so now for the next 5 years, the city's just focusing on maintenance. And, you know, like was said before, we're focusing on maintenance doesn't mean that a natural disaster or another what if could come up. But for right now, we're just focusing on maintenance. And that's going to be the same thing with wastewater. Wastewater has 16 CIP projects. But the same thing there. They've completed some of their CIP projects, so most of these are just focusing on maintaining the current system that we have.
And we just have to keep our fingers crossed the state doesn't make more regs.
Yes, yes. So for
My favorite
drainage,
subject.
there's only 3, and they really just address the improvements for the stormwater. In the past years of budget, there hasn't been any money put there, but for this next 2 years, we've added, I think Stephen is trying to, and Mark, try to actually do some, we have some needs that need to be handled with drainage. So we are asking that you adopt a resolution approving and appropriating the funds for the capital improvement project, appropriating for the next 2 years, but the actual plan is for the 5 years of 18-19 through 22-23. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
What was the dollar amount? I know Tom was talking about the dollar amount for the general fund. Is that the 3 million?
Was that 3% of the 10 million or 3% of the 4 million?
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the appropriate section here. So for Fund 1 in total, you're looking at 2.5, but there's only 206,000 for fiscal year 18, 150 for 19, and 150 for 20. So the 2.5 million really is beyond CIP and projects that we're currently wrapping up right now.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions?
And now comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You got comments, Tom? We'll start with you.
Okay. The CIP.
Mayor, do you want to do
capital
public comment?
improvement
Oh,
program.
yeah, I guess,
Or you-
I'm sorry. Public comment?
We got public comment too.
We got one public.
What? Any public comment? Okay, no public comment.
wait.
Oh, you have public comment? Sure. Yeah, well, you, go ahead and come on up, Julie. You can just state your name. That's fine.
Hi. My name's Julie Clark, and I just have a comment about the capital improvement. I've been in the city for 10 years now, and during that period of time, I read a beautiful master parks plan that was drafted in 2008 with the assistance of Foothill and Associates. It was great. There was a lot of beautiful promises and plans and things like that, and so all I'm asking is for the council to consider in the future plans to prioritize things that will actually improve the quality of life. I understand our infrastructure needs and things like sewage and all those things are important, but in terms of retaining or attracting new people to the city of Galt and finding it a nice place to live, parks are really at the top of the list. So just my 2 cents on that whole situation. So
Thank you. Any further public comment? Okay. Tom, back to you.
My understanding with CIP, which is a capital improvement program, is more of a long-range budget for more of your fixed facilities. And I guess deferred maintenance would fall in that too, but that would be your parks. And you've got 3 general categories. That would be items in progress, under construction, those are in design, and what the budget can handle within the next 2-year budget cycle. Now, the first 2 are already, the ship sailed on those. The third one, the proposed, what's going to happen in the next 2 years, that comes into the strategic plan, and that's a priority game, where you'd like to do a park, but the roof in Littleton Center blew off. Oh, well, Littleton gets the money. Those kind of things happen. And that's what we're looking at for the next 2 years in the CIP. Further down the road, when you're talking about the 500 million or whatever, then you're looking out for a real wish list at that point. That's why the CIP was a little easier for me to go through and digest, because I understood that a lot of the stuff, the ship's already sailed in this 2-year budget cycle. And the rest of it, as it comes up, will be prioritized, and I'm sure we'll have it right here in front of us to approve during the 2-year budget cycle.
Mark?
I've already asked my questions, got the answers I needed, so.
Kurt?
Did you like them?
I'm satisfied.
Paige?
Thank you, I'm done.
Okay. Just to respond to Julie's comment, the park master plan, which we're all involved with, most of the park master plan is for funding parks and building facilities for future development. And so one of the reasons why the park master plan, you haven't seen it develop to the extent that probably in 2008 we were hoping it would be, had a lot to do with the recession and the downfall, and that we haven't had the growth that was anticipated. But the park master plan is always consulted when we come to growth issues and when we come to impact fees and funding future development. So just let you know, it's doesn't play as big a part in the CIP, even though lots of the stuff in the CIP is funded out of impact and, impact and things. Not funded out of the general fund. Right? Did I answer that right, Armando? Yes. He's looking at me. Okay. So, do we have a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion by Vice Mayor Cruz, second by Councilmember Mulson. Roll call vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Molson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote. Okay, council meeting, Donna, council meeting of August 7th, 2017.
2018, yes.
2018? Oh.
That Tuesday, as you all are aware, is also the same night for our National Night Out. So staff is asking City Council to consider starting the City Council meeting earlier on the same day. 3 o'clock PM would be.
AM?
3 o'clock PM.
So 3 p.m. And then so that council can attend the National Night Out event.
That would be correct.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lamson, second by Councilmember Campion. Call for the vote.
Vice Mayor Cruz?
Aye.
Councilmember Molson?
Aye.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Hewer?
Aye. Motion passes 5-0 vote.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Comments by staff. We're starting with you, Mr. Winkler. You've been so
Chris was
quiet
ready.
tonight.
Budget's got me wore out.
Yeah, he got his budget passed.
As was noted by some, and we've, had generally endeavoring to have enhanced outreach to the community, the Safe Routes to School and Road Rehabilitation and Pedestrian Enhancements Project continues in full swing. They're actually, as we speak, there's night work and road closures. We're trying to not close Lincoln during the daytime and impose on the businesses. However, in the next couple of weeks, we're probably going to have to do that when we get to microsurfacing, for half-day closures and maybe do some evening or weekend closures to try to get in and get out quickly rather than have a protracted, one lane at a time kind of scenario that inconveniences the public. So thank the public for their patience, and a lot's getting done. And when we start putting down all the bike lanes and stripes and microsurfacing and slurry seals, we're going to be seeing a flurry of activity over the next 3 to 4 weeks. So just a heads up on that. I know many of you, perhaps in the public, saw in the SAC-B over the weekend a big 3-page article on water quality. Pleased to announce that Galt wasn't one of the deficient communities. However,
First name I looked for.
part of the proposed fix is a tax on compliant water systems to help with the deficient or the underprivileged water systems.
You're kidding.
Wow.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
we'll likely on next council meeting's agenda be putting for your consideration options for possible oppose unless amended on some trade bill legislation that would go that direction.
Thank you.
We have enough challenges without trying to help other communities.
Thank you.
Not to be selfish, but our citizens are paying plenty to have their quality of water. So just give you a heads up that if you're wondering, well, what's going on with that, we're going to bring back something on the next council agenda.
And I've been before the water board twice. I agree with you absolutely. And by the way, Lincoln was closed down this morning when I went to work.
Partially.
Partially, yeah.
Chris?
Just a quick update on the California Energy Commission grant that we received. We are working on the background report for the climate action plan, so we're expecting that to be completed hopefully within this next month. After that's complete, we'll start working on the strategy for achieving the state mandated GHG reductions. We're still on target to complete that in early 2019. We did finish the existing conditions and background report for the Carillion Boulevard Complete Streets Strategy. So staff is reviewing that draft, and we hope to get it cleaned up. And after that draft is complete and we get that set, we'll start working on an analysis of potential improvements to the street. And of course, we'll include the community and stakeholder groups when looking at strategies for improving Carillion Boulevard. And then I think Amy talked about the Galt Market Master Plan, kind of where we were. We're actually working on a draft RFP. We're hoping to get that out on the streets by the end of June and select a consultant that will actually start working on the plan in July. And we're hoping to wrap that up or get that moving as quickly as possible. And as mentioned, we will involve the community in crafting that plan. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Emily? You think you're done? Hi, Mark. Welcome. Anything? Laura? Armando?
I do. I'd like to thank Mr. Mark Zuckerberg and his social media platform for keeping my job interesting and fun. I'd also like to thank our Touch and Truck participants, Cal Waste, CSD Fire, JP Towing, Galt Elementary School District, Sacramento County Library, the Galt Police Department, Public Works and the Parks and Rec Department. And Jackie did a great job in putting that event together. She was on vacation, so I had to sub in for her, but she did a great job. So,
It was fun. Chief?
So on June 11th, we are hiring a new police officer. So that'll be his first day. I'm very excited about his arrival. With the promotion of Lieutenant Small, that created an opening for a sergeant in the department. That process is well underway. So thank you, Cora, for always jumping to that and opening these processes quickly. I've told her, and I'll say it publicly, where I came from, it would take about 4 months to do what she does in one day. So that process is underway. And then also our dispatch recruitment is well underway. The second week in June, we'll be doing testing for that. And then finally, on June 22nd, the Galt Police Department is going to be participating in Special Olympics Torch Run. We light the flame at the East Lawn Cemetery in Citrus Heights in honor of Officer Kevin Ton. Officer Slater will then transport that flame to Elk Grove, where we will do a passing of the torch to Elk Grove Police Department, and that torch will be run up to the Capitol, where there'll be a presentation at the Capitol. Following that same flame that we lit will continue on to UC Davis, where they have the games that afternoon. That's it.
Just another thank you to the council for your time and energy reviewing the budget and sitting down with staff, and a lot of good questions came out of our meetings and kind of keeping us on our toes. And a big thank you to the staff again. In budget, we'll be celebrating the new year on July 1, right? Or June 30th, somewhere in there. Thank you.
June 30th, we'll have a parade and celebration.
I like it. We'll do that. Celebrate our budget, June 30th.
Gotta get the permit.
Thank you, Armando.
Fireworks and everything, yeah. Kim?
I have nothing further, thank you.
Okay, Kirsten, Paige?
I would like to put on the next agenda the parade waivers for the high schools, if possible. And Chief, I miss when the torch used to run through town, and a former chief would get out in full gear and run along with the torch, just saying.
Yeah, that's not going to happen again.
You always,
I got
they beat me in the ton run too all the time.
consensus on the parade waiver
Yes, I'm fine.
on the agenda?
Bringing it back, parade waiver, consensus?
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Tom?
Need consensus or a vote?
No, just consensus.
Has to be on the agenda.
Yeah, I missed one item. You did too.
Which?
The Memorial Day celebration at the cemetery. I also attended that, which was a great speaker there, Colonel Spano.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mark?
Both Mark and I were there.
I know why I forgot. I'm still recovering from being up at 4 o'clock in the morning putting flags in the ground.
That's right. Yeah, I slept in.
Thanks. Steve, it never fails to amaze me how the state does this. No good work goes unpunished. And we do great things. We get the water where it needs to be. We take care of our people, and now we have to pay for the others. I did negate something earlier, and she's already left, but Galt Gators, they hosted over 300 people total last Saturday. One of the reasons why I wasn't able to make the truck event was the Roseville Seawolves. We had probably one of the largest groups I've seen out there in a long time. Unfortunately, we lost.
That's our
But it was a
first.
valiant effort.
That is
the
our
first time
first
in a
loss
long-
in 4 years.
I
I was
know.
going to say, in a very
My
long
kid
time.
was just like, but that's all I've got.
Okay. Well, Donna, anything?
No, thank you.
Okay. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Yeah, I was a starter once for the Galt Gators.